All right, a very good morning, everybody, from the flight deck once again. Welcome back to Pilot's Life live on Twitch. We are with Captain Naps, and we are here for another morning of flying here. Let me just check. My other device has actually got the volume up here. I thought it was muted. Because you got to monitor your stream to make sure it is working properly. But then, yeah, for whatever reason, I did not mute it. So, anywho, it's muted now. Yeah.
Roger.
Oh, and then this guy is listening to you the whole time. Yeah, so welcome back to the Pilot's Life. As you can see, we're still sitting here flying our 737 here. And if you can't tell from that particular angle, this is, look next door, this is the Alaska Airlines colors that we're flying with still. And we are going to be doing a flight today from Portland, if I can bring it over here. Portland, where we are right now, KPDX, all the way down to Burbank, on the north side of Los Angeles, KBUR, Burbank. And this is somebody I know here, Colin Smith. I think that's one of my friends here in the channel, I guess. Flying back and forth in this Pilot's Life world here. So, hey Colin, and hey everybody. So, that's what we're up against today. It's about a 2-hour flight, and then we'll have lots of time to chat once we get en route. Greetings from the flight deck at flight level 600, clocking Mach 2.45, going to Tenerife. I'm guessing if you're doing Mach 2.45, you're probably not even in the Concorde anymore. You're probably in that that Dark Star aircraft, or maybe you're in an SR-71. I think there was an SR-71 that was released not too long ago. If you want to go kind of retro and yeah, see the world the way they used to see it. You are in the Concorde. You managed to get 2.45. That's very impressive for the Concorde. You must be traveling with a pretty light load, because I know normally it maxed out at like 2.1, maybe 2.15. To get it to 2.45, you got to be really pushing a pretty light airplane through the sky, I imagine. It just wasn't really designed to go much faster than that. But anyways, well done, sir. Congratulations. Pardon me. Excuse me, something got caught in my throat right there. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and hop in this flight deck and get going here. And we'll have lots of chances to chat along the way. Now, the one thing you'll notice here right now is I'm kind of working against one of my big no-nos for myself personally when I'm flying, and that is that we are currently sitting here in the dark. So maybe if I scroll down a little better, the sun's just starting to creep above the horizon there. It's a little bit dark. I might stick with it, but I just want to kind of show you guys something, because the one toy I did manage to acquire in the last week was I did get the upgrade to the Parallel 42 flow menu. So I now no longer have the basic core package. I now have the essentials package, and what that allows you to do is have a whole bunch of extra widgets like this one right here, offset clock by +3 hours. One click of the button, I'm exactly 3 hours ahead in real time, which would allow me to fly this flight in a daytime environment instead of the nighttime environment, which is one of the reasons why I want to wait a little longer. So, but I could also immediately go back to real time really quickly here. And given that the sun is just sort of creeping over that horizon, I might stick with this. It'll definitely be daylight by the time we get down to California. I might do this actually in real time for once. So I think we're going to do that. I'm going to change my mind. I had originally planned to do it this way. I had planned to offset the clock by a couple hours forward just to sort of keep the flying in daylight. But I think it's going to be bright enough by the time we get going here. That sun is starting to creep over the horizon. By the time we get going, it might actually be it might be bright enough for you guys to actually see a lot of the scenery, which is one of the reasons why I do. I tend to offset the clock. I don't normally offset the clock when I'm flying personally. I like to fly in real time, day or night. I like to fly in the real world. Whatever the conditions, whatever the time, I like to fly right now. But for streaming, I just find it's so dark. The codec does not do the sim justice. The sim, you get quite a bit of background lighting and mood lighting kind of thing at night. The codec dumbs it all down. It really does not get the subtleties of a dark night type of flight. So I tend not to stream too much night flying for that reason. But with the sun coming up, I think we might just stick with the current time today. So let's do this. Let's hop in the flight deck. Let's get ready to go here. All right, there we go. That's a little better. And actually, the one thing I'm going to do here, so it was pointed out to me, and I haven't even had a chance to play with this too much. but there are a few things that I can make my FO do here. So run electrical power up, GPU precon. So focus the FO to run the electrical power procedure even if the GPU is already connected to the aircraft. So force the FO to run the electrical power up procedure. That's good. And then the other thing, somewhere in here there's an option. And I can't find it right now, but I was told there is an option where I can still, if checked, the user may issue autopilot commands, set commands to the FO even when the autopilot's engaged. FO autopilot commands override. That's a feature that I've been looking forward to for a little while, so I'm going to make sure that's checked. So thank you to, I can't remember who suggested that. Someone commented on one of my YouTube videos. I'll have to look that up and thank them. But to the guy who did do that, or thank you very much for pointing that out. There's so much software out there, and the updates come so fast and furious. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with everything. So I appreciate the feedback there, and I always do appreciate the feedback. I try to respond to almost every comment that comes through on my YouTube channel. So please do leave a comment if you do notice something that I can improve upon. I try to learn. I am not a 737 pilot in real life, so I'm learning with this airplane still. Let's start setting up.
Roger.
And ground power unit is available. Of course, he does send the jet way away, so I gotta bring it back. And he's gonna do the work for me. I don't even have to do anything. The only thing I'm just gonna have to do is turn on the light. There we go. Hey, I can see. But that's it. Let the FO do the work. And in the real airplane, this is often what happens, because at this point the captain will come and they'll grab the logbook from wherever you store it in your particular airplane, and the captain will usually be leafing through this while the FO's doing the power up, just seeing what the last, making sure service checks are done, seeing that the power up, or seeing that the there's no open snags or anything, seeing what has been snagged, what has failed in the last little while, and don't do that. I don't like that background lighting. I really never have. I've never been a fan of background lighting on these panels. I like the integral lighting. There we go. It's better. For some reason he didn't. He turned on the background lighting, but not the panel lighting. Of all the things to not do at night. What an odd choice. Anywho, it looks like he's got pretty much most of this done here. Let's have a look here. He did not get the IRSs onto nav. Just make sure all the engine switches are in the right place. Speed clacker. Alright. And then the other big thing we've got to do is get our emergency lights on here. We should probably call for a fuel truck actually while I'm thinking about it. And why can I not get a fuel truck? GSX, where are you? Oh, not that one. Ah. There it is. Alright, request refueling. Alaska Airlines, yes please.
Is on its way.
Alright, and please make sure we get the
Please
windshield.
don't load aircraft until the fuel truck arrives and ask to do
Heating
it.
up there. Perfect, windshields are heating up. Packs are on auto, not that we have any air supply yet, but we will have some soon. Lights, we've got nav lights, we've got logo lights. Alright, just got to make sure that my honeycomb panel matches the configuration inside the airplane here. Alright, so we could basically hop in the FMS here and start setting up while we wait for our passengers to come and our fuel to come. So we're going to hop down here. I can't see what I'm doing here on the other screen. Imagine doing Mach 10 on VATSIM. I've seen people try and do it. I mean, even Mach 2 is fast on VATSIM. It's something you notice. Now, why did my initialization things go away here? Why did he turn those off? You're an idiot. Alright, in the meantime, the GPS is there, so I'll grab those coordinates and be ready as soon as it pops up there. Yeah, even as a controller on VATSIM, Mach 2 is noticeable. You notice very quickly when people are hitting Mach 2. It's more than double the speed everybody else is doing. It makes a noticeable impact on your operation. That's why, like at VATSIM, a lot of places don't allow it, and it's important to make sure that you do verify with the controller that it's okay, because they need to plan on that, and they need to make sure that the way is clear, because you're going to cover a lot of ground really fast. Hopefully this guy did not screw up the computers by switching them off of nav. Oh, ay, 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 ay. I should read the documentation and make sure that I'm not doing it incorrectly here. While I'm at it here. What am I missing here? I'm missing me. There we go. Hey, everybody. Yeah. Because the funny thing was that even when I turned it off, when it was turned off, it still said align there. So I'm not sure what it's doing now, if it's I'm waiting for it still or what the deal is here, because I should be getting that initialization box here any second now.
I'm heading out for the walk around.
Roger. And I'm about to give up and start this again. Gonna count to 10. See if I can get this to align here. Oh, for crying out loud! This at the same thing happened last time too. This gave me. There we go. Yeah. So I probably turned it on and off too quickly here. So let's do it one more time with this one here as well. Count to 10. That's what happens when you see people's fingers flying too quickly across the board. All right. Hopefully that should align itself now.
The truck is in position.
And we can start with the rest of this process here.
Please don't load aircraft until the fuel truck. Please use your airplane fuel system to set the desired fuel quantity.
All right, so just have a quick look at our flight plan here just to get a fuel quantity. All right, where's my flight plan? Have a quick look. Grab our fuel quantity here. We're looking for 15.2, so let's round it up to 15.4 because we almost always take a little bit of extra just to make sure we wouldn't have to call the fuel guy back if we end up burning extra fuel out of the APU or whatever. All right, so that's good, and we can start setting this whole thing up here. So as always, I'm going to use my AviaWorks tablet because I just find it makes things work a little bit easier. All right. What are you going to crash into at flight level 600? At 600, yeah, you're not going to crash into much. It's the transition, though. That's the problem that's the problem we have to worry about is your transition to the supersonic speeds and climbing up through the altitudes, because even when you're doing just like, you know, Mach 1.1, 1.2, you're going substantially faster than everybody else in the climb, so you catch up to people really quick. So it's not at 600 that you are the problem, because once you get to 600, yeah, you're home free. You're the only one probably up there. There might be one other Concorde in the entire network most of the time. So yeah, that's not the problem. The problem is getting through the normal levels up from the airport up out to 600. So there we go. I've got my CD replicated now. Wow. If you're doing 30,000 feet per minute in the Concorde while you're accelerating, I think you've got a little bit too much power on it. I've flown with the Concorde a little bit, and it's she's a
security and safety
bit of a finicky airplane.
Are we good to start boarding?
Yes.
Thanks.
It can be a bit of a finicky airplane, and especially if you are loaded full with fuel, full with passengers, you're not going to get spectacular performance out of it most of the time.
Boarding requested.
Okay, so what are we doing here? So we're doing today KPDX origin. Oh, for crying out loud, stop moving the gosh darn jet bridge. We're going down to Burbank, KBUR, top right. And the flight number today, we are Alaska 202. All right. So we're going to depart Burbank. And let's pull up that flight plan here just so you guys can see what we're planning on here. Move that out of the way far enough. Alright, so our routing here today is the Cascade 2. And I don't believe we have any ATC. The only thing I can see is Vancouver, which of course is not going to help me today. So PDX weather. winds are out of the east, 090 10 gust 18. So I'm going to say it'll probably be a 10 left departure. I'm not terribly familiar with, and none of these are the end of my SID, so let me just check my Navigraph charts here as well. I've been to Portland a handful of times in the sim, a couple times with ATC, but I definitely am not familiar with it enough to know what the deal is. So we're taking this as far as Chisholm. So I just need to make sure I pick the right. It doesn't matter what transition I pick because Chisholm is where the split happens. So it doesn't matter what transition I pick. I think if I pick no transition, I think it'll just give me to Chisholm because that's where the commonality ends. And there it is. Yeah, perfect. Cascade 2 to Chisholm. Perfect. Love it. Okay. Then direct to Sinker, SYNKR, Sunbe, SUNBE, and FRA. And let's see here, it's definitely going to be a north, so we'll take that first one. Then direct Reberg for the Rocker 2. REBRG, Reberg, and the Rocker 2 arrival into Burbank. This has got us estimating 08, so we'll plan an ILS Zulu 08. I don't even know. I think Mike was the best transition. I've been to Burbank twice before, so Rocker. There's the Reberg transition. We can adjust this anyways as we go. So as long as we get the star in there, that's the important thing. The approach we can change pretty easily once we get up in cruise. All right, so we've got all that in there. Perfinit ZFW today, according to our flight plan. It's going to be 117.1. Oh, typing too fast. 117.1 reserves. 3.4. Wow, we're on up to 3.5. Not much. We're just going over the mountains to LAX if we miss in Burbank, so we don't necessarily need that much. We do have extra fuel, though. We got 25 minutes of extra fuel, so we do have extra fuel. It's just we don't have that much. We don't need that much to actually get to LA from Burbank, although we got to go over that mountain, so probably the estimate is probably a little bit on the low side. If it's coming down to that last 20 minutes or half hour of fuel, then we'll start to evaluate a little more seriously. All right, so we've got the cruise winds in there, N1 limit today, and PDX. We should hopefully be able to do a takeoff too.
There are no issues on the walk around. Good aeroplane.
Perfect. I'm just picking random numbers at this point. I don't have a takeoff optimizer for the 800. I realized the optimizer I was using the other day was for the 700. That doesn't necessarily help with the 800. So we'll just stick with the speeds, 29, 30, and 36. I just sort of picked some random settings, flap 15, and what do? We did climb 2 with a reasonable D rate on it. And that's it. So we've set up our aircraft for departure here. This is the only thing that kind of is a bit tough sometimes. Is there used to be some really good takeoff performance calculators. What was it? What was that calculator called? Back like 5-10 years ago, there was a really good takeoff performance calculator for the for all the jets. It worked. It had different configuration files for like all the major jets, and it's not. It stopped being supported. It's basically stopped working, and nobody's really replaced it. And that's one of the funny things. And these airplanes will generate their own numbers for you, but they're not necessarily optimal. You know, you could put in a power setting, you put a flap setting, and the airplane will tell you what speeds you need, but it won't tell you if that's the optimal flap setting for this runway, because that's a whole nother level of analysis, looking at the obstacles off the end of a runway and the airport environment and the length of the runway and the conditions of this day, and saying what would give me the lowest fuel burn to get off the ground. What's the lowest power setting I can use to get off the ground? Because higher power settings equal faster wear and tear on the engine. It's like 50% of the wear and tear on your engine in a flight happens in that first 2 to 3 minutes of the flight with the takeoff power setting. So the more you can reduce that takeoff power setting safely without sacrificing safe margins, but the lower power setting you can select, the bigger D rates you can select, the longer your engines are going to last.
Here's the fuel slip.
And from an economic perspective, that's what the airline's
nice
going to care about, is saving wear and tear on their engines. there's a company called Aerodata, and that's all they do. They simply run out. They simply have an algorithm. They have charts and information about almost every airport around the world, and different airlines contract them, and literally their computers are hooked into the ACAR system. So you will send out the takeoff parameters you're looking for, the runway, your takeoff weight. It'll grab the daily METAR, and it'll look at the runway and all the obstacles around it and calculate the best performance, the lowest power setting that will successfully get you airborne, and send that back to you. And you can override that if you want to, but it goes through the ACAR system. It's usually back in 60 to 90 seconds, and that's all this company does. Is just simply calculate performance data for the airlines, and probably thousands of calculations a day for each airline. It certainly saves the airlines a lot of money having sort of a common source and not having to calculate all individually. Anyhow, it's enough ranting about that. Let us just go through the flight deck and make sure that everything is set up for departure here. Should be able to do a stall test now. The stall test does not usually work until the airplane's been powered up for about 4 to 5 minutes, so it's not one that you can do as part of that initial flow in the airplane. Now, for some reason, I feel a little odd there. There we go. Felt like my head was in the wrong spot. And, yeah, ground power, 24 volts, 115. Yeah, that's fine. We could probably start the APU momentarily here. Is the fuel truck gone? Yeah, the fuel truck's long gone, and the guys are loaded bags, so we can definitely put seatbelts on. I guess I could look down here. Well, no, because I can't, because this airplane doesn't have the progressive fueling system, unfortunately. Alright, so I'm just going to verify. The FO should have done everything at this point. We got the forward end, the cargo doors open. I'm just verifying that he's done everything he needs to do. 39,000 feet, 800 feet for landing elevation. Sounds about right for Burbank. I don't have it handy, but that sounds about right. Stop turning up the background light. I hate the background light. Alright, just a quick test of everything. Dang, this airplane has a lot of light bulbs. And I was shocked the other day. I was listening to a podcast, and they were doing all sorts of like A320 trivia. And so like how often does an A320 take off? And apparently, on average, an A320, a member of the A320 family takes off every 2.5 seconds worldwide. Something to that effect, 2.5. It's an incredible number when you think about it, but there's so many of them out there flying. The number of manufacturers is insane, but the one that really kind of got me is how many switches are in the flight deck. I was like, I don't know, and I guess like 80, and the number's actually 400. There's 400 switches in the A320 flight deck, and that's a relatively simple flight deck compared to the 737. How many light bulbs are in the 737 flight deck, do you think? I don't even want to hazard a guess here. Alright, I did not hear him do the fire test, so we're just going to do the fire test quickly here, and then we can start the APU. Come on. Ugh, the switch is so small, sometimes it's really hard to get it on there. There we go. Start the APU, please. Did he hear me? Start the APU, please. I see it's registering the speech pattern, but it doesn't seem to want to do it. Ah, fine. Just do it myself, because it's really hard. It's like 2 buttons. Alright, waiting for that. We'll send a generic squawk code because we don't have anything right now. We'll make sure we've got some radios on. Get Unicom up here while we're at it, because we are flying live on VATSIM and we got no ATC. Boo. Alright, I think everything is done. Pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Oxygen.
Tested 100%.
Tested 100%. Navigation transfer and display switches. Normal, auto. Window heat on. Pressurization mode selector. Auto. Flight instruments.
Heading 194. Altimeter 3038.
Heading 194. Altimeter 3038. Parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Cutoff. Cutoff.
Pre-flight checklist completed.
Are you ready for the departure briefing?
Go ahead.
Alright. Got him muted again. I did notice that the altimeter had actually shifted slightly. It's actually 3040, so we just adjusted that. Let's turn the brightness down because I can barely see this thing. It's so bright. We'll have to turn it up as we get going here, but for now, it's just too bright. There we go. It's a little better. Alright. So today we're going to be doing taxi out in KPDX, and I think we said 10 left for departure. So it's going to be pretty straightforward taxi out. We're parked right over here, so we'll go out this way. Probably go out Echo 2, Echo Kilo, Kilo 1 to the threshold of 10 left. I see a lot of notes on the plan here. Just want to make sure there's nothing crazy. No, I don't see anything too crazy here. Okay, good. Good, good, good. All right. The departure today is the Cascade 3 RNAV departure. What does it say? Or no, sorry, 10-3 Cascade 2. Sorry, Cascade 2 on 10-3. Standard notes, turbojets only, non-GPS. That's not us. We have GPS, and it's active today. So for 10 left, climb heading 103. To 540, then direct river. All right, so we got 103. Let's bring up our legs page here. 540 and direct river. And then on depicted route to Chisholm. From Chisholm via transition, maintain assigned altitude, expect flight level 10 minutes after. So we don't have an assigned altitude. I'm going to leave it at the 10,000. That's a pretty reasonable altitude. I realized I never set up my guidance panel here. I kind of float through this without setting up the guidance panel. Should be able to arm LNAV and VNAV for departure. I love it. Speed, we're going to need 136 for V2. There we go. And then we got everything else, I think, set up here. Let's get the traffic mode on. Terrain we should probably have up for this one here because we got lots of terrain on this departure. And I think we're just about ready there. Let's just verify the waypoints as well. So after river, we go to Kosug, Haddis, Chisholm, and then Chisholm's the end of the star as far as we're concerned. Let's see here. The MSA around this airport, 6,200 to the north and 3,500 to the northeast, 3,500 to the southwest, and there is higher terrain, obviously, off to the southeast here as well, so we do need to make sure we are climbing. We got the terrain view up as well, so that will give us some feedback on what's coming up ahead. I think that's about it for the departure there. Terrain obviously is an issue, so we got it up here. We shouldn't have we should not have any issue clearing the terrain on the SID that we've got programmed. Just make sure we're keeping an eye on it. Operational. Let's pull up the NOTAMs really quickly here. Make sure we don't have anything exciting going on here. Kilo west of Victor, Apache ice, liquid de-ice, so there is some ice around. 10 left, closed Wednesday, 17, 18. That doesn't affect us today. And SIDS Cascade 2, takeoff 28 right. Nope, that does not affect us. I don't see anything that's really affecting our departure process. So that's all I've really got. The weather is actually pretty nice here in Portland this morning. It's 1 degree, 10 miles, clear skies, a little bit of gusty wind out of the east. And that's all I've got. Any questions?
No questions.
Beautiful. All right, so let's check on GSX's status here. GSX says we are boarding completed, so we can start requesting pushback and departure there. APU should be online. We can get the APU generator on the buses. No, other way. There we go. And with that, we can start disconnecting things. And yes, I see that. Unable 280 knots at cruise.
Hello,
That's fine.
Captain. We are ready for pushback.
We'll remove that. Doors, we're just waiting on that last door.
Hey guys, all packs are on board. Are we clear to close?
Thanks. It will be a short taxi.
Thanks. Let me know if you need
Departure checks
anything.
completed. Bypass pin inserted.
All right, and away she goes. And what I'm realizing now is that...
We still have a door light on here. Checked.
Oh, why do we have forward cargo still? Check on that in 1 second. I realize you guys don't have an overlay to look at there. And it's not coming up for some reason. So let me just...
Locking gear.
There we go. Forced it in there. Pre-flight, PDX Burbank. Yes, that all looks good now.
Before start checklist. Flight deck door closed and locked. MCP.
Okay, just hang on, buddy. I'm not ready yet. Give me a second here. I need to make sure I got everything that I need up and going here. I got a lot of stuff kind of on my other screen here. All right, so it is going to be tail to the left when we get going here.
Release parking brake.
And just want to see if there's any ATC around here at all on this side of the pond this morning here. Pretty much nothing. It's a little bit early, I guess. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to make sure. All right, first I need a sip of my coffee. Just need to think about these things. You got to give me sometimes just a minute. And it's funny because I used to be that FO. I used to always be in a rush. I used to be 17 steps ahead of the captain, and not in a bad way, but I had more than one captain tell me to slow down and wait for him. And it's not a terrible thing sometimes to be ahead of the game, but in a two-crew environment, you both need to be on the same page. It's important that you're both on the same page. If one person's so far ahead that the other person is sitting there wondering what they're doing and why they're so far behind, that doesn't help either. It's good to be a couple steps ahead. It's good to be thinking ahead, but you need to also make sure you're bringing the person you're working with you ahead.
Release parking brake.
All right. Let's start again. Let's start again. Cancel checklist. Before start checklist. Alright. Where's my bloody checklist so I can read it here, because he's obviously just, again, gone off without me. Alright.
Release parking brake.
Okay, so he did flight deck door closed and locked. Fuel, we've got 15,400 pounds, and the pumps are on. Passenger signs are all on. Windows locked, and what he wants me to do is MCP. So V2 136, heading 103, altitude 10,000.
Release
Takeoff
parking brake.
speeds.
V1 129, VR 130, V2 136.
CDU pre-flight.
Complete. Completed.
Rudder and aileron trim.
We're going to say checked and 0. Free and 0. Free and 0.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Release parking
Completed.
brake.
Anti-collision light on before start checklist complete.
Alright, so what have we got? We've got air conditioning. Alright, so we're ready for pushback. Everybody's happy. Brakes are off.
Commencing push.
Ready for pushback. Landing
All
instructions
engines
advised.
clear. Start at will.
Start sequence is
Pre-flight
1, then 2.
checklist. Oxygen.
Oh, cancel checklist. Cancel checklist.
Roger.
Start sequence is 1, then 2.
Check.
Start engine 1.
Starting engine 1. Oil pressure. Starter cutout.
Set parking brakes.
Cockpit to ground. We have a good engine start. You can disconnect.
Number 1 stable.
Brakes are set. Start engine 2.
Starting engine 2.
Alright. It's about to lose myself on the FO here.
Oil pressure.
It's really kind of ticking me off there. Make sure that transponder's in TARA. Alright, waiting to see that 25%. Add some fuel.
Unlocking gear.
Alright,
Tow
there's
truck
the tug.
disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
Just waiting to see the
Left is clear.
ramp personnel
Right
walk
is
away
clear.
with the pin.
Starter cutout. Number 2 is stable.
Roger. Alright, there she goes with the pin. Flaps 15. Flaps 15. Flight control check.
Ready.
Full left. Full right. Centered. Full up. Full down. Centered. Full left. Full right. Centered. Flight control check complete. After start checklist. Before taxi checklist.
Before taxi checklist. Generators on. Propane on. Anti-ice off. Isolation valve auto. Engine start switches continuous. Recall.
Where do I have an IRS light? Why do I have an IRS light now? Seem to both be online. I seem to both have a relevant position. Why do I have an IRS light? That is odd. I've never seen that light pop up before, and I don't know what it means, because there's the IRSs. They're both in nav. They both seem to have valid positions. Both seem to have valid track and ground speed. It's really weird. I'm not sure why it's giving me an IRS flag here. If I do that, it is there again. So give me 1 second. I'm going to go grab my QRH and see if we can't perhaps find a solution to this. 1 second here. Let me just go grab it. Ha, that is very interesting. So if this was the real world, we could get maintenance on the horn. That's the other thing too, is you can always get maintenance on the horn, and they can usually walk you through anything. In this case, I don't have a maintenance. All I've got is myself. So, see anything in the alphabetical index about IRSs? I don't see any lights on. So, like, the first problem I have is I don't know which light is or which fault is triggering this here. this IRS light here because everything seems to be working. I've not got any lights tripped off right now. I don't want to touch the IRSs because I don't want to have to align them again for another 20 minutes, but both IRSs seem to be running okay. So let me just have a little look-see here, see if I can't figure this out. Alright, let's see here, non-normal checklist, air systems, anti-ice and rain, automatic flight, comms, electrical, engines, APU. I'm just trying to find the navigation systems here. Fire protection, flight controls, flight instruments, displays, flight management, navigation. Alright, so the ones I have under navigation, flight management, navigation, that all I have is fuel, hydraulics, landing gear, and warning system. So it's got to be something in this chapter is the best I can come up with, but it's just not giving me any lights here. If I have an FMC fail, then I can deal with that. Dual FMC failure, FMC disagree, FMC fail. FMC CDU alerting message, GLS, GPS, ILS, IRS DC, DC fail, IRS fault. But see, I don't even have the fault light on. Like, if there's an IRS fault, then these lights should come on. There should be a fault light. I should have a DC fail. I could have a GPS light out, but I don't have any of these things out, so there's something odd here. The last thing I'm going to do then, so this is going to basically be me not talking to maintenance, is we're going to try and figure this out. We're just going to see if there is actually a failed system. And there are no failed systems. All failures active, none. So I feel like this is probably a glitch related to the fact that I turned the nav system, the IRS is off and then on again. So yeah, we could go back to the gate. We could deal with it that way. What we'd probably do in real life is get the maintenance on the phone and tell them what we're seeing here. We're seeing an IRS fault light with no faults indicated. And they're going to probably chalk it up to a faulty light itself. So we'll keep an eye on that system, but we'll reset the caution for now. And I wonder if there's any kind of reset for the warning system. And overspeed damage various warning horn, altitude alert, ground sensitivity, PSEU, SP, SCU. No, there's nothing really that I can reset. So short of resetting the whole sim, we're not going to do that. So we're going to say that we talked to maintenance, and maintenance is fine with that. The IRSs are both working just fine. They both are giving us numbers here, so it seems to be a spurious warning. So maintenance would probably advise that we can continue, and I would agree with that assessment, and we're going to continue on our way. All right. Checked. Set and checked. Set and checked.
Checked. Auto brake. RTO. Engine start levers.
Idle D10.
Flight controls.
Checked.
Ground equipment.
Is removed. Clear.
Clear. B4 taxi checklist complete.
All right. Well, that took a little
Checked.
while. Clear left.
Clear right.
Taxi light on. That took a little longer than I expected to get moving there, but sometimes that's what happens. Very often you get a failure right after pushback when you're first starting to power on all the systems and get everything switched over from the AC, from the APU over to the generator itself. So very often that's what happens. You often do get these failures right after engine start, and you're sitting there. Of course, you've just pushed back. You're now blocking the ramp. Everything, trying to figure them out. That was one where we probably could have started taxiing, and we probably could have found a place to stop and deal with it. But in that case, you would talk to the ramp crew themselves, not the ramp crew, but the ramp controller, the ground controller. Say, hey, are we in anybody's way? If we are, we can move. If not, we'll just sit here and out of the way and diagnose our problem, because that's kind of a narrow alley probably a lot of traffic in and out. Maybe because it's early morning, it wasn't so bad. But these are the kind of things you got to think about. You know, not just your own needs, but also think about, you know, playing nice in the sandbox, being part of the system. You don't want to block all the other users of the system because you have a problem. So if it's a problem where, like, okay, well, nose wheel steering's not working, we can't move the airplane, that's a whole different story. But if it's like, we got a problem with one of the computers, we might need to do some resets. Can you taxi the airplane? Well, yeah, we can taxi the airplane. We just can't take off yet. Okay, great. Go taxi somewhere where you're not blocking everybody else. Deal with your problem. Let me know when you're done. Get back in line. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. It happens probably way more often than certainly the passengers have realized it. Depending on the airplane and depending on the day, like, you'll often have like at least one snag per leg. And oftentimes it's just really minor stuff. And NATO Power Gaming has subscribed. Thank you. Appreciate it. Keeping just funding my addiction here. Anyways, that's all you guys are doing.
Captain, the cabin is secure.
Clear left.
Clear right.
All you guys are doing is just funding me buying more stuff for my Flight Simulator 2. At the end of the day, like, the Essentials version of Flow here, that was funded by, I got one of my payments from YouTube. So I don't get a payment every month, but I get a payment every couple of months when enough accumulates in the account. So thank you guys. Without you guys watching and watching ads on my channels, watching the videos, and or subscribing, the subscribers are the biggest contributors by far. Certainly as individuals, although it's not actually more than 50% of the revenue. But anyways, you guys are what help pay for that. So I'm going to show that off once we get going. Show what this new parallel 42 flow can do. But in the meantime, before takeoff checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Flaps.
Flaps 15, green light.
Stabilizer trim.
It'll probably help to set that. Right about there. 3.7 units.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
And before we get any farther, we'll just take one quick look and make sure. Stop listening to me first of all, because I know what you're going to do. Yes, so we do have connection status. Okay, flight sim's connected. We are in taxi out, so it does know where we are. It does know what we're doing, so we are looking good. Clear left.
Clear right.
Runway entry procedure.
Okay. Cabin crew, take your seats. Clear on the approach.
Take off right to that sunrise too. Gonna have visors in this airplane.
Ready to go.
Right into the sun.
Checked.
Thrust is armed. Takeoff. Alright, what is it not like?
Checked.
Alright. Put them to idle. What is not right here? Got flaps. Oh, the flaps went to... Good thing that alarm went off. The flaps went to 0. They were at 15. I think you guys all heard me look at that and saw that. And I think because I moved the thrust levers, it checked the flap setting, or it made it detect the flap setting on my flap axis. So instead of FS2Crew setting it, now I've got to set it. Good thing we have that takeoff configuration warning. I guess I should probably make a radio call too. And Portland traffic, Alaska 202, runway 10 left, taking off on a southbound departure, Cascade 2. Alright, so now, oh, that's too far, that's 25. That's what we're looking for. Flaps 15, green light. Let's try this again. Auto thrust is rearmed. There, now it's gonna work.
Thrust set.
Check.
80 knots.
Roger.
Checked. V1. Rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up.
Gear up. .400 feet.
VNav speed. LNav.
Checked.
Flaps 1.
Speed check.
Flaps up.
Speed check. Flaps up set.
Autopilot on.
Checked.
After takeoff checklist.
Standby.
What a beautiful morning out here. Looks absolutely wonderful. Days like this in the sim, it's just mesmerizing. For those of you guys that have noticed my what's it called? My new kind of intro to these streams. I have like before I start streaming, I've got a little collection of screenshots that I've taken, and I've never really been a big screenshot taker before, but this sim is just so beautiful. You just can't help but want to just take screenshots all the time. And of course, it's not going to work for me now. Of course. Not going to work for me. Ah, pity. It's a beautiful, beautiful shot right there. Maybe I can steal it from this stream here. Let me just take myself away for a minute as well. That's just the departure with the mountains and the river, everything else. It just looks so nice out there. You can almost see, you can almost taste the mist in the valley. You can see it. You can almost taste it, feel it. You can feel the cool air kind of sinking into those valleys as the sun rises over the top. Just such a beautiful sim. It's absolutely fantastic. So it's great to it's great for taking screenshots. I love taking screenshots in the sim, and I've never been a big screenshot taker before because I just never felt this, like you could take some nice pictures, but the graphics overall are just not at the level they're at right now. Now they're just at a whole other level here. Oh, there's my 10,000. I'm not even paying attention to flying anymore. I'm just enjoying the ride. Okay, let's focus on what we're doing here. What are we up to? 390? Is all the way to 390? Yeah, it was 390 is our cruise, yeah. Okay, cool. 390, and away we go. N1, VNav speed.
10,000. Happy to release the cabin.
Go for it.
Okay.
It's a beautiful day. Seatbelts off, everyone go pee. Looks like a really nice morning out here. Oh, it's just lovely. But I do. I spend so much time just staring at the sim sometimes, just flying. I do spend a lot of time in the flight deck and you know, I won't say playing the game, but working through the simulation and actually practicing the skills that you actually need, the decision making you actually need. But this is just a beautiful sim to look at too. This airplane, but just the scenery in the background too, it's amazing sometimes. Can't help but love it. Anyways, first of all, Tim, thank you. I did see all those messages in the channel there. You have gifted a sub to way too many people. But thank you. I appreciate it because yeah, that's what supports this addiction. Basically, at the end of the day, you know, and through this addiction, I'm supporting not only I don't look upon it as benevolent. I'm getting something selfish out of this. I buy these products of Parallel 42's flow, the PNG 737. I buy them. I get a lot of joy out of them. But I also look at it as it's also great to be supporting the community, and I appreciate that. And I will be the first to admit that back in the day when I was young and I didn't have a whole lot of money, I did download things that I wouldn't pay for. And I was young, I was naive, it was easy to do. I have since turned over completely the other way, and I 100% believe in supporting the developers that develop the software. I realize now how much effort goes into this, and I 100% support them now, and I encourage everyone to do the same. I don't think you're ever going to be able to stop software piracy altogether. It's just not. It's impractical to really think you're ever going to completely stop it. I think the best thing you can do is offer people good value for their dollar, and you will get the vast majority, and especially in a community like this, where we know it's a small community for the most part. These developers are not big faceless corporations. They're collections of individuals. They're passionate individuals. You want to support their efforts. So I don't think anyone has too much problem supporting people. So I'm happy to support the developers that provide good products out there. Let's just do this transition here.
Strobes coming on.
Transition, set standard.
Standard set.
And now I won't talk to him again for a while. But yeah, I 100% believe in supporting this community, and I also believe in supporting those people that offer their products for free. And of course, Tim, how fitting that you're sitting here donating, because VATSIM is right at the top of that list of incredible software network capabilities. It's a handsome sounding co-pilot. Yeah, VATSIM is right there at the top of the list of fantastic freeware products that provide so much value, so much immersion, and give back, and never ask anything. Never even really put an ad in front of you on the website. Just you know, this is what we're offering. It's free. It's paid for by other people. And yes, now VATSIM asks for donations, but doesn't really ask for donations. It says you have the choice to donate, and in no way does it impact your ability to fly in the network. You're not going to get better service because you donated. Nobody's going to even know that you donated or not. It's just your chance to recognize that this network means something to you, that you get a lot of joy out of it, and that it's not free to operate. So therefore, if you have the capability and the means to support it, and I've wanted to for quite a while now, you can do that. You can support the network financially, so that it will continue to be a viable operation for you and for everybody else that enjoys it. So I'm happy to give back some money. I will definitely give more in the future. Things are a little tight right now. That first year pay is not great, but I will make it work, and in the long run, it'll be a better world for it. I forgot that I always take myself off webcam, and then I forget to put myself back on the webcam. So you guys can watch me drink my coffee, because you want the pilot experience. This is what I do. I sit here and I drink coffee while I fly airplanes. I couldn't imagine flying an airplane without coffee. Coffee maker's broken in the galley. That might be a no-go. I might have to go. Or I have to go into the terminal and get some coffee then, or it's a no-go. All right, synced up that heading nicely. Is my training done? Yes. Yes, my friend, it is finally done. It took a long time. It took almost a full 4 months. It was 4 months less like a day. But it's finally done. full-fledged doing nothing but just bombing around now. Dane Flats, hey, welcome to the chat. Welcome to just sitting out here watching the sunrise over the Rockies. Well, the sun is kind of up now, but watching the sunrise over the Rockies as we head southbound down the coast to Burbank. So we got a good little chunk of flying in front of us here. Tim, I got to take that button away from you. You're doing way too much good with it. But yeah, no, it's nice to be finally done. I mean, you're, and I won't say you're under a lot of pressure when you're in training, because at the end of the day, most of the training for professional, responsible pilots is self-imposed. We know we need to be good. We know we need to be the best of our ability as fast as we can, and we feel bad when we're not. Myself and my sim partner especially, like we knew going to the sim that we're not supposed to be operating at 100% because we're brand new on the airplane, never flown this airplane before, you're learning it. But at the same time, we both feel disappointed in ourselves because we know the level we like to operate. We both like to operate like way up here. We like to operate way up here, and you know, when you're way down here and you're just struggling and you're like, I kind of understand it, but then like you're making lots of mistakes everywhere because you're learning and you're new and there's lots of stuff to learn. You feel bad. You feel, you know, as a professional, you feel really bad. I'm not operating at the level I'd like to operate at. And every instructor said the same thing. They're like, for how much time you've spent in this airplane thus far, you guys are operating well above where you need to be. But it's like, hey, I know we're above where we should be at this point, but we're just not at the level we're comfortable with. We want to be up there, you know this airplane well, be able to make smart operational decisions, anticipate everything that's going to happen with this aircraft, and it's just, it's frustrating to be at that level. So it's nice to be done. It's really nice to be done the training, just flying the line at this point now, and just sort of getting used to flying with different people, having lots of fun little adventures. I had a great flight last week. We went down to LA and spent the night in Long Beach and came back the next day, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I had not been to California in at least 10 to 11 years. So it was, even though we were only there for a short period of time, it was so pleasant, first of all, because it's not snowing in California. So it's just nice to get out and be away from the weather. Went out for an early morning run. The hotel's in a pretty good location overall, so went for a run up and down the Long Beach shore, just seeing what was out there and just enjoying it. It's just nice to be down there and not have to wear a winter coat and winter boots all the time too. So well, and that's it. Like, operating an airplane is normally way up here, and you want to be up there the whole time, and when you're in training it just feels awkward when you're learning, and you know that you can't be up here, but you want to be. You're operating way down here, but you want to be up here, and you want to be up there as fast as you can. And it takes a long time. It really does. I'm starting to gather some comfort level with the airplane now. It definitely feels. I definitely feel comfortable. If things start to go a little bit sideways, I can fall behind a little bit. But overall, I feel pretty comfortable with the airplane thus far. But there has been a whole lot of crazy stuff that's happened yet. I was reading about there was a flight that was come back just last week that had a a SEC failure, I think, or a FAC failure. One of the flight control computers in the 320 failed on the way back, and they had to end up having to defer it because it was I think they had like a double failure. It went into alternate law, and for landing they were in direct law. So these things happen. It's not to say they don't happen. They don't happen very often, but they definitely still happen. So would I be comfortable at this point with alternate law? Probably. I mean, at the end of the day, alternate law, all it really does is remove most of the protection, is what really alternate law does. The airplane almost reacts exactly the same. It's just the protections are gone. Direct law is where it really changes up, where the feel of the airplane, because now you're just directly controlling the control surfaces instead of trying to pick a rate. But yeah, these things happen. It happened last week. And it's funny the things you read about, because, you know, I look at my phone in the morning and I get all sorts of weird things in my newsfeed. And the one morning I looked at it, and there's this article about how about a month ago there'd been a gear failure. The gear had not come down when they were on approach. They selected the gear down, didn't come down. They did the alternate extension. They ran all the checklists. Everybody was happy. They came. They landed. Maintenance came and looked at it and said, "Oh, yeah, it's a failure of the actual landing gear solenoid, like the switch in the flight deck was failed. So they just replaced the switch in the flight deck. It worked fine after that. It went back to flying and went on its merry way." the hilarious irony of that whole story is that I went to work that day, and guess which airplane I sat in? I sat in that airplane that had the gear failure 1 month earlier. And so I turned to the captain, I told him the story. I'm like, you'll never guess what I read this morning. And then he's like, that's interesting. So then he scrolls back, he flips back through the logbook a bunch of pages. Like, he's like, oh, are you sure it was this airplane? And then, sure enough, he gets far enough back there, about 5 weeks back there, and there it is. Landing gear failed to extend when commanded. It's like, what are the odds that I would read that story about that airplane that day, and then I'm going to fly that airplane? Google knows too much about your life. It knows more about my life than I do. It knew which airplane I was going to fly that day, I think. Anyways, yeah, long story short, it's good to be done. Well, we do have some traffic out here on VATSIM. Fortunately, we should be at 390 before we get close to him here, hopefully. We do have some traffic out there. The other thing that I was going to show you guys here, because I did finally use that YouTube advertising revenue check, and I did get the Essentials version of Flow from Parallel 42. So for those of you that watched the last stream, I showed off the core version, which was basically just, it changes the menu here. So this is the new menu, the user interface that you can use with Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I got to say, first of all, I like this thing, and I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I really like it for two reasons. One, it's kind of it's nice that you can really kind of customize it, because you can pull these out and you can put anything you want in here. So I'll go to the other one because I don't want to mess up what I've already done. But like, you can have multiple wheels, so you can extend it. But what I really like about it, the other thing is that it doesn't make the menu appear at the top of the screen every time you move your mouse around. So you actually have to press a button to bring up the menu, which is simple. And it works so effectively, though, and if wherever your mouse is where it comes up. It's fine, it doesn't matter. The whole point is that I control when it pops up. It's not just moving the mouse and all of a sudden, boom, there's this little handlebar that appears at the top, and sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. So now I have the control, I like that. But fully customizable, so you can do all these things to, you can add all these widgets, so each one of these buttons is a widget, so you've got your kind of default menu widget. So my first wheel here, I've got kind of all the default stuff I had from the Microsoft Flight Simulator menu. So you've got set up the weather, set up cameras, weight balance, all that sort of stuff. But then you go and then you buy the Essentials version, and you get a whole lot more widgets. So let me just pick an empty one here just to show you what's available. And so you've got your kind of default stuff. You can even actually set up a folder and everything. So there's a bunch of widgets you can set up that are kind of included, and then there's also all these other core widgets that are included with the Essentials version. So you can do all sorts of stuff. You can pick which game server you want to be connected to and have it be a hot button here in the menu. You can do these time of day offsets, 3, 6, 12 hours, 1 hour, day, night, whatever you want to do. You can have a button that immediately changes that stuff. Doors. Do you have an airplane that you can't figure out how to open all the doors on it? You can have buttons for all the different doors. You can have instant weather, live weather, few clouds. You want to have an overcast rainy day storm, and you can drop any of these things in there. So I personally like live weather, but just for fun, let's I don't want to mess up too much with this, so let's not do that one. Let's do something different here. I don't want to open the doors, but yeah, time of day, like I showed you, like you can go 3 hours earlier, 3 hours later, and boom, it's nighttime now instead of daytime. Exactly 3 hours earlier. Now I go to real time just with one click of the button. So really powerful stuff here, some of these widgets. So game controls, so you can see I've got the active pause here at the top. I've got an exit, like you can put the simulator directly from here. You can even increase and decrease the sim rate. I didn't know that Microsoft Flight Simulator even supported this as an option. You can fast forward, you can go, double speed or half speed or whatever. I didn't even know that was there. Toggle 3D thermals, so if you want to do gliding and you want to turn them on and off periodically, you can do that. And all sorts of system stuff for the aircraft, so you can start engines, toggle them on and off. You can toggle your autopilot on and off. So anything where like your interface is not working out really well, or perhaps you just want to be able to do stuff from outside the airplane while you're looking at the external views, and you want to be able to change stuff, you can do it without popping back into the airplane. Reset batteries, toggle avionics master, just a lot of fairly basic stuff. But I think a lot of these game controls, the weather controls, the lighting time controls, all those kind of things, really useful. And the other thing that again is really useful about this is that you can also have multiple widgets here. So you can have all aircraft, and then you can even have wheels specific for your aircraft. So this is something I'm actually planning on doing here, starting to customize for different airplanes. So what I want in this one is from MSFS panel here, I want my FS2Crew on this airplane specifically. I don't necessarily want it on other airplanes, but I want it on this airplane specifically. So now I've got multiple wheels. I've got this one just for the 737. If I fly something else, this wheel won't pop up. Every airplane has a customized wheel as well as your kind of general wheels. So, but it's the widgets that really add a lot of power to this, and I really did not kind of realize what was available in these widgets and how powerful they could be to really quickly change some stuff around in the sim, depending on what you want to do. So, Dane Flats, your friend made that flow. Yeah, it's a great piece of software. There's a lot of value to be had for it. What can I say? Like, I like the default widgets. I hope that there's going to be kind of slowly over time more widgets added, because in the Pro version, there's VNAV path, FMC speed. We're leveling off here at 390. Because in the Pro version, what you get is you get fully customizable widgets, so you can write your own scripts to do basically anything. So all these widgets that I have here in the Essentials version, they're all predefined by Parallel 42, and they serve the most common functions. They really do a good job. Like, there is a fantastic array of stuff in there. Most of the stuff that I would want is in there. Yeah, the Pro version lets you create and load in customized community-made widgets, so community members can write their own scripts that will execute different things within the sim, and you can share them if you're in the Pro version. So I kind of hope that even as the Essentials version that we might get some of that sharing, or some of that will at least trickle down, and some of the more popular ones perhaps will make it into future updates of the Essentials version, because I think there's a few really useful ones. One of the things that I think would probably be the most useful would be for the FS2Crew, instead of bring up the whole command center, is if there was a widget that instead let me directly launch the 737 FS2Crew software, rather than have to go through here and select which one I want, because this is not the most efficient. So then you got to go down here, you got to pick this rather than click that. You know, what would be a great custom script button would be just a button that directly launches this this software, that launches the 737 FS2Crew, or whatever one you want, but specifically launches that without having to go through that intermediate menu. That would be a great widget, and I'm sure it's very possible to do that. So those are the kind of things I think that will add even more value in the long run. It's almost twice the price for the Pro version. Do I think it's going to be worth it? For me, maybe not, but having seen quickly the power of the widgets, the kind of stuff you can do with them, maybe it is something that would be worthwhile. I'm beginning to think that maybe in the long run, it is going to be worth investing that extra money in the Pro version. They have FS2Crew for the 737-800, but I have to wait to get the plane when it's released. Yeah, I think they started releasing the 737s in the marketplace now. I remember reading an article about that in the last week or so, something about the FS2 or the PMDG stuff coming to the marketplace now, and maybe it was the 800 version that came to the marketplace. I can't remember, but something about it. But yeah. Oh, is it the 700? Okay, yeah. See, and I remember reading something about the PMDG. I don't personally, like, I don't shop in the marketplace. I do most of my shopping outside the marketplace, so I don't pay too much attention to the marketplace articles. Yeah, this is the 800 right now, and I have both the 700 and the 800. I had to get the 700 just because it was the first one to come out. I've been waiting so long to fly these airplanes that I had to have the 700 series. I just had to have the 737 period. So whatever one came out first, if they come out with the 600 first, I probably would have bought that. I can kind of sort of justify two versions of it. I'm not going to probably buy any more. And yeah, the 747, that'll be a beautiful thing too. Honestly, that is one of my favorite airplanes to fly. It's just such a beautiful bird. It's so unique and different. I'm looking forward to that. Totally looking forward to that. I'm not holding my breath. I'm sure PNDG's working on it. I'm sure it's going to be a while. Yeah, and I'm sure that PNDG probably did that release probably a little bit in the order they did it, just to sort of play with the marketplace and see what kind of support they were going to get from the marketplace. See if release one of the sort of medium popularity versions, see how many you're going to sell a lot of those ones, and then sort of work your way up from there. Because I think the 800 probably at the end of the day would have been, if you'd release them all simultaneously, would have been the most popular without a doubt. So I think there's a lot of very sound decision-making, business decision-making on PMDG's part. I really do. They played us all, and they played us all like fiddles, and I think a lot of us fell for it. But I mean, it was a long development window, and it was a long time before we had a good airplane in the sim. They all sort of fell out at once. I guess the SDK reached that maturity, but they all sort of fell into our laps at once. We got the 737, the Mad Dog, and the Phoenix, all in very short order. All within, like, probably, what was it, like, I don't even remember. It's in like a 3-month window. I think we went from having, like, the best jet we had was like the Aerosoft CRJ to all of a sudden we had like these 3 study level jets in the sim just like that. It was quite a nice little time to get into the sim anyways, but had to have it. Had to get it out there and had to have it. I decided to use the rest of that revenue check from YouTube pretty much and buy myself the Mad Dog as well, because I flew the Mad Dog in the P3D World, and I enjoyed that airplane. It's a bit of a noisy, rattly old bird with a lot of a noisy trim system, and airplane yells at you for everything, overspeed, but at the same time, it even more than I think than the 737. It's an old-fashioned airplane, so many switches, so much to do to try and get it going. That sense of mastery when you can do it, when you know what you're doing, know how to get the airplane up and running and launched, and handle it. She's a bit of a slippery bird. She doesn't like to slow down a whole lot. It takes a little bit of effort to slow that thing down. It's quite a fun sense of accomplishment when you can do that. So I'm happy to fly that. I've only flown it once so far because I just got it this past week, but I took it out for a flight. Definitely had some fun with it. I'm going to have some more fun with it when I have time. Just a matter of finding that time. But what other things were? What other things? And then of course there's that the Embraer 175, which I've been enjoying kind of flying it. It's not great. It's not terrible at this phase of the game, but those developers are working hard. I've been part of the beta test team now for about a month and a half, and they are working hard. Nah, it's fun. As long as you're having fun, as long as everyone's having fun. Yeah. Well, who was I listening to? So I was listening to an interview the other day with Dave Grohl, and what he said was that it was just how much the Foo Fighters as a band just love to make music, and they don't even care too much if people are listening. As long as they're having fun, that's what really matters to them. They want to bring that joy to other people. It's not that they want to keep the joy to themselves, but they're not necessarily doing it completely for other people. They really are kind of doing it for themselves, for the joy of music, for the love of music. And he said that one of the most important things that they ever do before they go out on stage, every single time, and they will not go out on stage, is they won't go out on stage until they're all laughing. When they're backstage and they're getting ready and they're warming themselves up and they're kind of getting themselves all sort of going. One of the most important things they said is that they have to be in a good mood to go out on stage. So Dave's made it his personal mission to make sure that everybody's laughing. As soon as everybody's laughing, they can leave the dressing room and they can go out on stage. If they're not laughing, it doesn't matter if the crowd's waiting and chanting their names and you know they've been introduced and they're just not coming out. If they're not laughing when they walk on stage, you won't go out on stage because that's the tone he wants. That's the tone the whole band wants. Is to be friends, to be having fun and enjoying what they're doing. And what a great way to be able to go out there. We are not judging the cabin crew by photos today. I just thought that was such a wonderful thing, like to be able to say, like, I get to spend time making music with my friends, and every time I go out and do a show, I'm just spending time with people I enjoy spending time with, doing what we love to do. And what a great way to look at it. It's not a job that way. They genuinely go out there and give it their best every single time because they love what they're doing. I thought it was a great interview. It was a really great interview to listen to. Dave Grohl's a really great, down-to-earth kind of guy. You think he's so famous, and he kind of pulled off the impossible. He went from one super band into another super band, and I won't say that I wrote him off as a one-hit wonder, but you know, I didn't think there was going to be too much after Nirvana from the people who were left. It was such a different thing. And it's funny to hear Dave talk about it too, because it was Nirvana was very much Kurt's band. He didn't bring. He had his own stuff he was kind of doing and playing with and writing songs sometimes, but he rarely brought much to the band, because it was very much Kurt's brainchild, and he liked to keep it going that way, which is really kind of neat to kind of think about it. Because it was what was the joke Dave said? It's like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he left the band? And what was it? It was I'm trying to remember this exact joke. It's like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he left the band? Hey guys, I think I've got a song we could play. And it's funny to hear him make jokes about it, but it was a really great interview. I really enjoyed it. Anywho, don't even get me into that. Don't even get me into the whole thing. It was it's just nice to kind of see someone who was part of that go back and reflect on it. And yeah, there was some unpleasantness at the end, but just to sort of see, though, like to listen to Dave Grohl reflect about like how they were just teenagers at the time. He was 24, 23, didn't even know what he was doing at the time. And all of a sudden, just this fame just thrown at him. I mean, imagine what you were 25 and just all of a sudden, worldwide fame thrown at you. Like, well, how would you deal with it? Yeah, and for him to pull it off and go from being the drummer in one of the certainly one of the most popular bands of the 90s, and then suddenly turn around and put together a whole nother band and be able to go back and turn it into a super group as well. Like, it's almost, I won't say it's unheard of in music, but it's definitely hard. All right, well, if you're 19, then imagine that much fame. Like, I'm well past 19, so I could only imagine looking back at my 20s and trying to deal with that kind of fame at that time. My 20s are long in the rearview mirror. We left them behind a long time ago. Let's see. I'm just trying to think what other stuff there was. But anyway, that Embraer 175 from Flight Sim Studios, I think it's going to be a very good airplane when it gets done. The guys are working very hard, and the questions they're asking of the beta test team they're pretty intense questions. They really want to get this airplane right. It's not in a great condition right now, but they're working on the systems one at a time. They're trying to get it out there. They're trying to make sure they have a revenue stream as well to support the studio. But the questions they ask, like, that's what kind of blows me away. Like, almost every day I check in and there's a new question. It's like, okay, so we want to ask you about this system. How does this work? How do you guys do this? What are the procedures you guys do with this system? And they're really kind of trying to follow this, because one thing about Embraer, the manuals are not great. You look at the Airbus stuff, and even the Airbus stuff, there's a lot of stuff in there, but there's also a lot of stuff that kind of gets glossed over in terms of the actual connections between the different systems. It's like, well, if A, then B, but it doesn't tell you why necessarily these things are done this way or how they're actually connected. It just says the computers are going to talk to each other, and if A happens, B is going to happen. It doesn't tell you what's talking to what. So sometimes you need that real-world experience, that real-world insight. Embraer is even worse. Their manuals are very skimpy on the details. They sort of give you the overview of the system. They tell you some of the stuff it's going to do, but in terms of like the actual system logic of why it does certain things at certain times, oftentimes the actual system logic is skipped right over in the manuals. And so these guys trying to build this airplane, I understand why they're having a tough time with it. The manuals are a little bit skimpy on the details sometimes, so you have to go to these real world guys. Yeah, I do have the Embraer 175 because I'm part of the beta test team. So I do have it. I do fly it. It's not in a great condition right now. If you need an airplane that really flies well, and it's not great for VATSIM because the navigation system really is not it's not great right now, unfortunately. It's still, the FMS they have right now is still based on the Asobo FMS. It's an adaptation of the Asobo FMS, so it's not great. Yeah, beta test team fancy. But there is a rewrite, a complete total rewrite. They are writing their own FMS from scratch right now, so it's gonna take some time. They say it's about 60 to 70% done right now. It's a complicated FMS. It's not something that they're going to be able to write overnight, but they do want to completely rebuild it so it's not dependent on Asobo. So even trying to go direct places, it works about half the time in the plane right now. But they are working hard on it. Every day, they're throwing questions out at the beta test team. How do you deal with this? So the looks are really good. That's the thing. Like, it looks really good. Because they took the X-plane model and ported it. Whose is it? Is it X-Crafter or something? but whoever made the Embraer for X-Plane, they ported that model over, so that's why the exterior model looks good, and it looks really good right off the bat. There are some few the glitches, and we're still finding glitches with the visual models, with the adaptation, things that are a little bit low texture, things that are not quite right. But that's why it looks so good right off the bat. But the technical stuff is just starting to come together now. The systems are getting better. There's a lot of kind of focus on the electrical system right now. Lots of little glitches with that. The autopilot system is also going to be improved. It's not great right now because, again, it's also built on the Asobo autopilot, which is not great sometimes. It doesn't really work all that well in a lot of functions. So there will be kind of a custom autopilot built onto that eventually, but it's a matter of getting the stuff down there. So it's going to take time, I think. But judging by the questions and what's coming at the beta test team, it's going to be a great airplane when it gets done. It's going to take them a year easily. It's not an easy airplane. It's not quite as complicated as an Airbus, but the Embraer is a very highly automated airplane with a lot of computers and a lot of logic in there, and that's the hard part, is picking out that logic, trying to make sure that it handles all the different situations well, because they do not do a good job of communicating through the manuals what the logic is. They'll describe a switch, and they'll be like, in the auto position, the fuel pumps will turn on automatically in accordance with system logic, and then it never explains what the system logic is, so we're sort of left to figure it out. We know they'll come on automatically at certain times, but we're sort of left figuring it out a lot of the time. But it's a good airplane, and I think it's a great airplane for the sim too, because it's a relatively short haul airplane, but you can do half an hour flight, couple hour flight with it. It's great for the sort of similar stuff to the 737 and the 320. It's not quite the long range. You get about 1,500, maybe 2,000 miles out of it. 2,000 is about as much as you're ever going to get out of that. So it's not long range. You're not doing transcontinental stuff, but you can do a good 2 to 3 hour flight in that airplane. And she goes pretty fast. She keeps up with most of them. How come the E-Jets didn't sell more than the CRJs? You know, and I wonder the same thing sometimes, because I love the E-Jets so much more than the CRJ. I've flown the CRJ on the sim, but I've flown in the back, and as a passenger, the CRJs feel like a small tin can. They feel very, not necessarily rattly, but very, very small. You get in an Embraer, and you almost don't even notice the difference from an Airbus. The cabin is big enough that you don't really feel small. You don't feel like a small cabin. You're not stooping to walk down the aisle if you're 6 feet tall. It's a nice size cabin on the inside. So, I don't know why Embraer didn't do a better job of selling more airplanes. I think it's just that the CRJ came to market first. I think that was probably the biggest thing, was the CRJ came to the market first, so operators bought it. They were happy with it. They kept operating it. And it was hard to kind of, it's harder to break into a market than when you create the market. CRJ's almost created the regional jet market. CRJ's really created that whole, Bombardier created that whole market with the CRJ back in the day. So, and then Embraer sort of entered the market late. So I think that's part of the reason why, is that it's a bit tougher. The other thing about the CRJ, and I think maybe the other reason why the airlines like the CRJ, is you don't need ground equipment. The trouble with the ERJ, with the E-Jets, is that you need a jet bridge, or you need air stairs, you need something, a ramp, something. Yeah, there's no integral air stairs in the E-Jets at all. So that restricts their operation from a regional standpoint. You can't go into the smallest airports if they don't have air stairs for you, if they don't have a jet bridge. So it definitely does good for some of the busier regional markets. Like when we were flying them out of Toronto. We flew them all over the Northeast U.S. So we went to all like the hubs in the Northeast U.S. So everything's got jet bridges. It's not like you're ever going to be walking across the ramp there. But yeah, you lose a little bit of that flexibility when you don't have the integral air stairs. The CRJ has the integral air stairs, so you can buy a fleet of CRJs. You can operate them. You can operate them to the LaGuardias and the Newarks and Bostons, but you can also operate them to the little tiny third tier, airports. You can go to places that you never even heard of, and just pull up on the ramp, leave the APU running, pop the door, passengers get off, passengers get on, away we go again. Maybe you'll take some fuel, maybe you won't, but that's probably the number one reason why the CRJ did better than the E-Jet, because I think the E-Jet is a comfortable ride. It maybe not as I don't know if it's not as efficient, but and then the CRJ has had some issues in the past. They've had issues with icing on flaps and things like that, where it can get pretty if they can get flap failures pretty easily, and then in icy conditions it can be pretty nasty in that airplane because flaps 45 in the CRJ has a lot of drag on that. We don't, even in the E-Jet, we very seldom did the full flap landing. We almost always did the flap 5 landing because it was just a little more comfortable, a little faster. You were able to kind of keep pace with all the rest of the jets a little easier. Not that the E-Jet was slow, but if you went for a full flap landing, now you're talking your ref speeds are down into the 120s. It's a little bit tougher to kind of work within an airport flow in that case. Yeah, it's interesting though. I don't know why the E-Jet did not sell better. I know why the version 2 is not selling better, and it's the I don't know how to best put it, but it strikes me as a big engineering decision-making oversight. But because the E-Jets are selling a lot of 190 E-Jets, lots of people are buying the 190 E-Jets, but they've shelved the 170 and 175 E2 aircraft, and the reason why is because it doesn't fit into any of the North American scope clauses. Most of the airlines in North America, there's usually a seat limit of 76 to 80 passengers. The E2 version of the 175 was going to be past that. It was going to be, the maximum seating capacity was going to be, I think, 90, 86 or 90, so it didn't fit on, and it was also going to be a much heavier weight too. It went from a max takeoff weight of, what was it, 30, shoot, I've already forgotten, 38,790? I believe it was 38,790. It went up by about 4,000 kilos, which pushed it again over the scope clause. A lot of the scope clauses are not just seat limited, but also weight limited. So as soon as it went up there, all of these regional operators, you know, the Republics and SkyWest and all those that were operating all these regional flights on behalf of all these carriers could not operate the E2 version, which is ironic because it burns less fuel but carries more people. And it's because it carries more fuel, or because it carries more people, it doesn't fit any of the scope clauses. It would have to be operated by the mainline operators. Most mainline operators, they don't want to touch an airplane that's that small. It's 80 seats. They'd rather pawn it off on their regional carriers. So it's an airplane without a market right now, the E2 version. So it's a bit unfortunate because I think the Embraer, like even the 175 version, is very nice kind of small market aircraft. You can open up a lot of markets with an airplane that small, and especially if you can get an efficient version, and that's what the 75 version is. It's a very small, but it's still very efficient. The E2 version is going to be very efficient, but it's an airplane without a market. No one in North America will buy this because it doesn't fit any of the scope clauses. And right now, the power is going to the unions because there's such a pilot shortage happening in North America right now, even more so in the U.S. than in Canada, but even Canada is getting... The situation is starting to get a little desperate in Canada, though the airlines won't let on about it. The power right now is with the pilots, is with the unions. They're not going to negotiate to expand the scope clauses. They're going to say a hard pass on that this next round of negotiations. Everyone's coming up for negotiations anytime soon. They're going to say hard pass. We are not upping the scope clause, upping the seat limit on the regional jets past where it is right now. So for the foreseeable future, at least a half a decade or more, the E2 version of the 175 is dead in the water. The yoke is the Euro style, and this will turn the airlines off a bit. I don't think the airlines care too much about that, honestly. I mean, it's funny because I was listening to a discussion about this, about the A321 XLR, and you know, this ultra long range, 4,700 mile range, single aisle airliner. Like everyone's like, you know, no one's going to want to take that when you have the 87 and the 350 as an option because, you know, you get this nice low cabin altitude. Like the trouble with the 321 is this is an older airframe, relatively speaking. You know, you're talking about cabin altitudes of 8,000 easily when you're cruising at 38,000 feet on these long range flights. Oh, that makes everybody tired. And there's a bunch of pilots sitting there talking about it. And these are guys that spend a lot of time in the airplanes operating, but also deadheading a lot. Pilots spend a lot of time sitting in the back of airplanes too, deadheading, positioning for one flight or another. So some pretty experienced travelers, and the common consensus was that no one ever noticed the difference between a 350 and an 87 and like a 321 in terms of, oh, I felt so much better because of the cabin altitude was lower in the 350, so I got to my destination 10 hours later and I was fully rested and ready to go again. It's like, no, for the most part, in economy class especially, what really is the determining factor is how much space you get, how you get, and what kind of meal service you might get, what kind of food you can eat on the airplane. Those are the things that really determine how you feel when you get to your destination. The cabin altitude it's not to say that it won't have an impact, but it's way down there, because people are arguing that the 321, you can't take it on a 10-hour flight because the cabin altitude is too high. No one's going to want to do that. It's like, on the grand scheme of things, what passengers are looking at, especially when they're buying tickets, the cabin altitude of the airplane that you're proposed to fly on is not even on anybody's radar. They're not going to say, oh, I won't take the 321 because the cabin altitude is too high on this one. That's way too far down there. Yeah, it was a silly. Yeah, I kind of figured it was a joke, but it's kind of funny. Like, people made that point. People are saying, oh yeah, it's going to be the no one's going to want to take a 321 for 3,000 or 4,000 miles just because the cabin altitude is like, that's probably on the list of stuff that affect your comfort when you're flying. The cabin altitude itself, whether it's 6,000 or 8,000, is not a huge difference. It's more how much space do you have. If you're cramped into a seat where the next seat is like right here in front of you, that's what's going to impact how you feel when you get there. Oh, I was cramped in the seat, and then I was 4 inches away from the TV screen on the seat back in front of me for 10 hours. That's what's going to make you tired. It's not whether the cabin altitude is 6,000 or 8,000. It's how much space do you actually get the passengers in the back. So the XLR is going to be an interesting airplane. It's going to fill a lot of niches with no 5.7 replacement in sight anytime soon. It's going to fill a very interesting niche for a lot of kind of skinnier long haul routes. I think if Airbus can do what they say they're going to do with it and put it out, with the kind of range they're talking about, the kind of efficiency they're talking about, it's going to do a lot of great things. It's going to have a lot of markets it can serve. The biggest problem that I can see with it, and I don't know if Airbus how badly Airbus is tackling this. The biggest problem is going to come down to loading issues. It's going to come down to how many people can you practically put on the airplane and put in enough fuel to do these flights. So if you're talking a 3,000-mile flight, you're going to need a lot of fuel. You're going to need 25 tons of fuel to do that. How many people are you going to be offsetting? So I think a lot of the airlines are looking at a lower density configuration for the XLRs, because the other problem too is you also run out of hold space. With some of these longer range flights, people bring in bigger and bigger bags, so you go more and more checked bags when you get on these longer range flights. You're going to run out of hold space too. So I think you're going to see the airlines, you're not going to see a whole lot of high density configuration XLRs, because it defeats the purpose of the XLR if you're putting so much weight in it that you can't put the extra fuel to go that distance anyways. So I think you're going to see a lot more low density configuration XLRs, more first class, business class, economy plus seats up front. Maybe even airlines squeezing the lie flat bed, business class seats into the front of an XLR to sort of bring the passenger count down a little bit while still keeping the revenue up there, and making it a palatable experience for these 10-hour flights. That's going to be probably one of the biggest kind of compromises airlines are going to have to make, is how many people can we practically stick in this airplane and still carry enough fuel, have enough hold space for everybody's bags to go on these, to go to these 10 to 12-hour flights instead of a 3 or 4 hour flight, transcontinental flight that you might be doing for a couple of days. You're talking Europe, you're probably talking people are going for a week or two. A lot of them, you're talking the tourists that are going longer term. It's going to be a lot more checked baggage. It's going to be a lot more weight in the hold. It's going to be a lot more space in the hold. So will there be enough? And especially because they're taking a little bit of hold space away to put these center tanks in there to give it the range. You're losing out probably at least one can, if not two cans from the aft cargo hold. That's a lot of storage capacity. Yeah, you're probably right. It's funny because I've done so many walkarounds on the Airbus now, and it's funny. You look at the nose styling on the 320, and it reminds me of the DC3 and the DC6 with kind of a very the flight deck windows are very angular. They're not very aerodynamic. The airplane's got some aerodynamics to it. It's rounded, but it doesn't. The windows are very flat panel windows, kind of bolted onto this round fuselage, and it's very odd. It has a very old look to it in a way when you're sitting there looking at the front part of the Airbus, especially the 320. Anyways, yeah, I've noticed that. Going around it, it looks like a lot older airplane than it actually is. Just looking at just the flight deck area with these very, very flat windows stuck in this rounded fuselage. yeah, the nose looks stumpy, but just look at the windows. That's the thing that kind of gets me. Like, not that other airplanes have curved windows, but there's something about it. It's just sort of like it sort of slopes up, and then all of a sudden angle and sharp angle. These windows, these flat windows, and then sharp angle again, and then sort of the curve over the top. It looks like a very old airplane when you just look at just kind of the window section. A320 didn't achieve its full potential. Nobody ordered the bowling alley swimming pool version. Well, and that was another interesting point that these guys made. I was listening to this whole podcast. They were going on and on about the past and the future of the A320, but with the XLR, someone wrote an article that said, is the 321 XLR the replacement for the A380? Which seems almost farcical when you first read it, and then you start to kind of get into the article a little bit, and you read this guy's premise, and you're like, you know what, it's actually not that far-fetched. You're basically talking about a half an A380, a 321 XLR, about 200 people. You're talking basically half an A380. But you're talking still the long-range flights that the A380 is kind of comfortable doing. Not obviously the ultra-long range, like 18-hour, but like it does sort of fit like a big niche where you can do two, where you were doing maybe one A380 turn in a day on a 10-hour leg. You now just throw two 321 XLRs on that, and you've done the same thing. So, and especially, like I said, if you're trying to go for that lower density configuration, kind of a little bit more upper class, just because you can't get as many butts in the seats, so I'd rather get the high-paying butts in the seats. There is a little bit of logic to that statement. It's called the 787. The 787 doesn't quite, but it doesn't get close to the capacity of the 380 in that sense. I mean, yeah, like the 787 is sort of in the heavy category too, and I don't necessarily agree with that whole, I was going to replace it. But I think the other thing too is that the airlines found it so awkward to operate the 380 too. It was so big, and it needed such specialized infrastructure. And half the time you go to an airport, and half the airport would have to come to a halt while you're taxiing the 380. And you couldn't taxi on the parallel taxiway system because the 380's wingspan was too big. It was just, the whole thing was too big. It was so awkward. They were saying that during last winter, there was a couple storms that happened in Europe that basically killed the operations of the 380s for days in Europe because there were no alternates that the 380 could hold because the weather conditions were bad in so many places, and the numbers are so, not necessarily tight, but you start to put in contaminated runways, and the 380 suddenly becomes ruled out of all of these airports. Suddenly you have a real operations problem. Emirates had a real operations problem where they couldn't get flights into Europe sometimes for a week to almost any destination because they couldn't hold anything as an alternate. Because there's so few alternates to begin with, and then you start throwing some contaminated runways on those few places that are your alternates, that are your available alternates that can handle the airplane, and all of a sudden, boom, the operations just shut down for a period of time. It was an impressive airplane, but it was impractical. It was so big, it was just impractical to realistically operate. It took hours to load the 380. Exactly. You compare, assuming that range was not an issue, and you say you're doing an 8-hour flight, and you're looking at the 380 versus the 321. So you've got two airplanes that potentially could do this. You have to throw two 321s at it, or a 380. Well, yeah, the 380, you only got to fly it once, but yeah, you got to load it, you got to unload it, you got to taxi around these airports. You can throw two 321s at the same problem and not even bat an eyelid. They fit into almost every airport, every gate. 380, there's only like 2 or 3 gates at most airports that can handle that airplane. You get a second one show up, and all of a sudden, where are we going to put this one? Because the one gate is there. Yeah, the 380 impressed me just for some of the stats, but it never quite had that level of class and elegance. The 380 very much came from the deregulated airline travel period to me. It was all about, let's get as many seats as we can into the airplane. Even though like Emirates tried to fly it as a very classy airplane, and the first class service, in the 380 was a great service, but it really spoke to me more as it was how much density can we put into one airplane? How many seats can we put in there? That was sort of the aspect. The 47 kind of came way before that, before deregulation, before you were concerned with how many seats go in an airplane. It was very much, flying was still classy for everybody, even the economy class passengers. Flying was still classy when the 747 came out. Yeah, Emirates liked them, but almost everybody else ditched them. It worked for Emirates' business model. That's the thing. Like, Emirates' business model was, we want to bring as many people as possible to Dubai, have them all change planes, and go to the rest of the world. It basically like the FedEx of aviation, the FedEx of passenger aviation, if you will. Just bring as much density as possible directly into Dubai, turn them all around, out on different flights, connect to different flights, and out you go again. That was their business model, and so for that business model, it kind of worked. But again, they kind of got by because of their scale. They were able to scale up and be able to transport enough passengers to enough markets. And if one market kind of closed for a day because of the weather or whatever, it drop in the bucket for Emirates, operating 200 of these things around the world every day like it did. But yeah, you look at something like the 321, you can drop that into almost any airport as long as you got jet bridge, you got a source of fuel, you got some belt load, or you got some cargo loaders, you're set. You can drop that into almost any airport, and that's the thing. And I talked about this, I think, in the last stream, was the difference between the 37 and the 320 and the era that they came from. The 37, much like the CRJ, and you mentioned that earlier, they had integral air stairs. The 737 had integral air stairs. It was designed to be a low-slung airplane. It was designed that way intentionally. It was designed to sit very close to the ground because it was designed to operate in airports that had very limited ground infrastructure. So there was an integral air stairs on a lot of the early models because you'd go to airports that didn't have a jet bridge, didn't maybe even have their own air stairs, or you could divert to an airport that didn't have air stairs. The fuselage is very low to the ground. That was intentional because a lot of places you went to, like literally the baggage loading was a guy with a tractor and a cart behind it. He'd go and he'd stand on the cart and start throwing stuff in, throwing bags in the hold. So it was almost like the regional jet in a way. Originally, it was designed to be a self-sufficient airplane when it got to the outstations, and it worked really well in the beginning. And then it backfired when Boeing had to start putting more and more seats into it and had to put bigger engines on it. And then when we had to make the landing gear longer, then we had to introduce MCAS. We all know what happened then. So it was designed for a very different mission than what it does now. I was at an airport the other day and I saw like a 200 737, and it's funny to look at the 200 737 because it ends like here. It's like half the length of the 800. It's back then it was a regional jet. It was essentially what the 737 was. It did very small markets. It sat 40 people. It was a regional jet in the beginning, and then it's been stretched and lengthened and became the backbone of flying most of the fleets now. Mono wing design. I've seen pictures of it. It'd be interesting to see it actually fly, but if they could make the numbers work. The trouble with the airline business is such a conservative business. People don't like to get into the revolution. Nobody wants to be the first airline to do anything really terribly different. And they were talking about, in the next 15 years or so, seeing A320 is being run. No, not the A320 itself, but the A320 size airplanes being run as hybrid aircraft or even as electric aircraft for shorter regional flights. And a lot of the manufacturers are kind of pushing that direction, and I think the airlines kind of want it for the efficiency, but at the same time, who wants to be the first one to have those airplanes out there? Like, you look at the C series when they started flying, and they got an altitude restriction very quickly because they found they were having engine issues at high altitudes. It's such a conservative business, it's tough to be on the leading edge of this business. Airbus was smart, however. They made their flight deck so radically different that traditional controls became proprietary, and once trained in that style, it became difficult to return to normal, so airlines became locked in those frames rather than retrain their crews. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. I see the... Having trained on the Airbus, I see the logic behind a lot of their design choices now. They tried to keep it simple. I don't know if it worked, because like I said, I didn't realize there's 400 switches on the Airbus flight deck. There's 400 and something switches. It doesn't feel like it, because you're certainly not moving that many switches when you're on a normal day. In the 737, there's 400 switches because we move most of them in the average day. What did I do? Did I hit the trim wheel? Yeah, probably hit the trim wheel. Every time I hit this trim wheel, ever so slightly, it kicks the autopilot off. Son of a bugger. Now, we have LNAV. Why do we not have VNAV here?
1011.
There we go. That's weird. I must have hit that trim wheel again. I do it all the time now because it's on the left side of the honeycomb. It's right near my knee. I almost hit it right there with my hand just there again. All right. She wants to climb. She's got to get this turn back on course first. Oh, mercy. Let's cut back on that bane. Probably get a little bit better out of this. Yeah. I've grown to like the Airbus. I like a lot of stuff. I actually bid for the 37, and then I got the Airbus, and I was not disappointed. I got a high enough position in my class that I kind of had almost my choice of airplanes. I didn't get the 737, but I knew I could hold a narrowbody. I knew I wanted to hold a narrowbody. I wanted to fly narrowbody for a while because the upgrade on the narrowbody is going to be coming in a matter of years, not decades. You want to go wide body, your upgrade time is decades. At my age, I probably will never hold a left seat on a wide body because I'm just too far down the list. That being said, the hiring is insane. That's the other thing I was talking about. I alluded to this earlier. The pilot shortage in Canada is real. It exists. This is part of the reason for the Sunwing meltdown, is that they have traditionally brought in about 60 to 70 pilots every year during the winter, during their high season from foreign countries on a temporary foreign worker visas. And the government of Canada has just allowed this to continue for years and years and years. Oh, well, they're trained on the 37. It's like there's hundreds upon hundreds of pilots trained on the 37 in Canada, and if you wanted pilots to fly the 737, you train them on it. You don't bring in outside workers. I'm more than a little annoyed that Sunwing has gotten away with this for years. And finally, this year, the government turned them down and said, no, you're not going to get these temporary foreign workers anymore. You want to fly Canadian routes as a Canadian airline, you hire Canadian pilots. And that screwed their winter schedule. They tried to make it work, and they had absolutely no give. And the vacation airlines seldom have much give to begin with, but they had no give in their schedule. So as soon as bad weather started to hit at their hubs in Toronto and throughout Canada, in that week leading up to Christmas, things just fell apart. They had no extra airplanes, no extra pilots to go and fly these rescue flights when things got canceled. So people sat in Mexican resorts for a week or more waiting for the first time there was a plane and a crew available to go and fly down south. And this is going to become the reality. There's been a lot of talk about the sectorization of the airline industry in Canada, how WestJet and Air Canada have kind of retreated a little bit and retrenched themselves. So Air Canada in the east and WestJet in the west. And part of this is that they're fending off the low-cost carriers, Flair and Sunwing. Not Sunwing, Flair and Canada Jetlines and Lynx and even Porter coming in, trying to pick up on market share in all these major Canadian markets. There's not enough market share for the number of airlines that are trying to operate in Canada all of a sudden. There just is not. There's not that many people that live in this country, and I mean you can try and drop the fares all you want, but at the end of the day, there's only a certain number of big cities to connect to. There's not enough market for the number of airlines that are suddenly all trying to get this ultra low cost market going here. Meanwhile, all they're doing is stealing traffic from Air Canada and WestJet. Not that I don't approve of competition. I think competition is healthy, but I think it's gone way too far now. There's way too many airlines, and at least one of these airlines is not going to survive the next 5 years, whether it's through a merger or whether they go bankrupt. But there's just all of a sudden there's too many airlines running at the same place. So. And the other part of the equation is that there's not enough pilots to fly these airplanes. You can't expand the industry without expanding the pilot pool, and the pilot pool has been shrinking for years. The retirements have been up there. The people, finally got the word, like in the last 10 to 20 years, that aviation is not a good industry if you want to ever make money and make a decent living. It used to take 10, 15, 20 years to get a decent paying airline job. So people stopped doing it, and the numbers bear that out. Now COVID's kind of a little bit of a weird aberration, so you got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt because a lot of the flight schools closed too. But even Transport Canada themselves announced that in 2019 there were something like 1,100 new commercial pilot licenses issued in Canada. No, actually, sorry, it was in the decade before. It was so from 2010 to 2020, 2019 anyways, on average 1,100 new commercial licenses were issued per year in Canada. Then came COVID, and a lot of flight schools had to shut down due to COVID protocols and everything, lockdowns and everything, but the number went to like 200 commercial licenses per year for the last 2 years. which is just insane. If 1,000 a year was barely sustained in the industry, and then for it to plummet to 200, it's just, there just simply are no pilots in the pipeline. There's no other pipeline. It's not like you get like a lot of military pilots in Canada. The Canadian military has very, very few pilots, so it's not a big pipeline for airlines to hire. So you look at the numbers, the number of people that the airlines are hiring, and all the airlines are doing it. All the airlines are hiring hundreds of pilots. There's no pilots left. They're literally turning over every rock. The experience level in the flight deck has gone way down, especially in the right seat. And it's okay in the right seat because people have got to learn somehow, some way. But then you end up with companies that have literally hundreds of pilots that are not eligible to upgrade to the left seat because they don't have very much experience. They've been in the right seat for a year or 2 or 3, and they have very little operational experience. Relatively speaking, I haven't really seen too much go wrong because these airplanes work so well most of the time. And then, you need to upgrade them, but a lot of them aren't even eligible. They don't even have the airline transport license yet because they can't get the pilot command time because they're stuck on the right seat. And you end up with this catch-22 where you get these people who are first officers for years and years and years because they can't get into the left seat because they don't have the command time, and they can't afford it on the first officer salary. They can't afford to pay to go rent an airplane to build up the command time. So you end up with all these airlines that have empty unfilled captain seats. I told this guy Airbus isn't intuitive. He said, well, when you learn it, it makes sense. I said, if you have to learn it, that's the definition of non-intuitive. Yeah, I will grant you that to a degree. It's the same thing with Apple, though. Apple Apple products are not intuitive either until Apple teaches you how to operate their own product. Then when Apple has shown you how to operate your product, like, oh yeah, well that makes sense now. There is some validity to that statement, though, that you realize that Airbus is intuitive when you learn the Airbus. But I think more what he means is that when you learn the way Airbus thinks and is put together, and you start to realize, okay, this is the Airbus logic, and then even things you haven't learned about, you start to understand the Airbus logic for things you haven't learned about. So there is a logic and a method to their madness. Do insurance companies dictate the hours required for captain seats at the airlines? They definitely will have a hand in it. I won't say that they'll be the only ones, but they do have a big hand in it. Some airlines probably more than others. They may, yeah. I know one of the airlines I worked at, they had a matrix. They actually had a matrix of different experience levels. So depending on how much time you had on type, how much total time you had, how much experience you had as a captain, as a PIC, how much time you had perhaps maybe not on type but on other airline operations. These various different combinations of factors. They had a whole table, and if you had a lot of total time but only a certain amount of time on type, that was okay. But if you didn't have maybe as much total time but you had a lot of time on type, or you had a lot of airline experience, it was okay. So and a lot of that was based on insurance. And yeah, it's definitely not exclusively insurance, but the insurance companies do definitely have a bearing on it, and it affects the airline's rates. I know that company, they would go to the really Microsoft. They would go to their insurance company with a new table, and they'd be like, we need to put some of our people from the right seat and the left seat. This is our new table that we're proposing. And the insurance company would look at it, and they'd give them a quote based on that, and they determine if they could make it work, if they could make the payments work. Yeah, the problem with having counterintuitive logic is when there's an emergency, your brain dictates what makes sense, and that is usually not what you need to do in that plane. Again, yes and no. The nice thing about pilots, especially professional level airline pilots, is that you spend a lot of time in these airplanes. You spend a lot of time training, first of all. You spend a lot of time in these airplanes. By the time you do get out on the line, you do have a sense of the logic of these airplanes. So even in an emergency, you will revert, in a lot of cases, to the logic that's based on the airplane. I understand the argument about Airbus being counterintuitive, but I don't think it's counterintuitive. I think it's just a different way of looking at things. The trouble is, like, when you spend a lot of time in one airplane, you get used to thinking in that particular airplane's mode of thinking. You get into that philosophy. You get into a different airplane, you say, oh, this is completely backwards from everything I've learned. And from everything you've learned, yes. But once you get into that airplane and go down it, yes, at this point where I am right now, something really bad happens in an Airbus. would I fall back on some of my old habits? My old habits probably would creep in there. They have crept in there. But at the same time, you can't let that stifle innovation as well. You got to be able to move forward instead of just stuck in the past. I mean, if that was the case, we'd all be, we wouldn't have any screens in front of us. We'd all still have steam gauges if you try and extend that logic all the way, because, well, these screens are different from what we used to look at when we looked at steam gauges, and maybe they're not as intuitive right off the bat until you've learned how to use them. If you spent 20 years flying steam gauges and you try and come in here and you look at these fancy screens, you're like, I don't understand where anything is. Give me a freaking altimeter, an airspeed indicator, and an attitude indicator, and I'll find it. Yeah, there are some issues with the side stick and the lack of feedback and the ability to see what the other guy's doing because there's no control wheel moving. I'll be honest with you that is one of the things I still don't really like about the Airbus. I mean, don't get me wrong. Having a tray in front of you to be able to write out the logbook or, heck, eat something, put your coffee on, that's fantastic. I love it. I'm really loving that aspect. It's nice to have that, pull that out, put your meal on there, your logbook or whatever, your flight plan, everything you want on there. That's great, and I'm loving that. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, there's something nice about having a yoke, and I will 100% agree with that. I miss the yoke. I miss that tactile feedback, feeling what the airplane's doing. The only thing that really gives you much tactile feedback is the rudder, and I've noticed that. Like the rudder pedals will move as the rudder moves. So you're sitting there at the gate in the wind, and you're kind of resting your feet just lightly on the rudder pedals just because you're sitting there, and all of a sudden you feel them start to move underneath you because the wind's pushing the rudder around. Feels a little odd. Because the rest of the airplane you don't notice anything the controls are doing because you've got the two joysticks. They add them all up. The one nice thing is that if both joysticks are moving now, there is a button in the flight deck that does yell at you and say, show you that both pilots are trying to put an input. So you can actually override one pilot and disconnect their input until they override you. So if somebody's panicking and doing something, you can actually override it now. And if they're panicking, chances are they're not in a good enough frame of mind. They're just doing the instinct of just pulling back or whatever. That they won't have the instinct to press the override button again and override you. So hopefully, if you've got your better brain on your shoulders, but there are risks to that system. Absolutely, I'm not a huge fan of the joystick. But anyways, as much as I'm enjoying this conversation, I can see our top of drop is coming up pretty quickly here. So yeah, 40 miles away. We really need to get set up here. For this arrival. So let's see here. Burbank, 140 at 10. Let's pull up the charts here. 140 at 10. What are we going to do for an arrival today here? Because we're going to have to start down here very soon. That flight went really quick. Faster than I expected it to. Or maybe it's just because we're chatting so much. Alright, so 140 at 10. That would probably put us onto runway 15, so that'll work for me if there's a good approach onto 15 here. All there is the 4 stacks visual to 15. You guys want to see me do the 4 stacks visual, don't you? Turn final approach for runway 1500 or above. Okay, first of all, let's make sure. Ooh, fuel at 1800 broken at 2500. No. Weather minimum ceiling 5500. No, we can't do the 4 stacks visual. Oh, I was going to try and do it too. I was honestly going to try and do it. Okay, so we can't do that because of the visual conditions. So we'll probably have to do the ILS to runway 8. Let me just widen this out so I can see a little bit better what the difference is here. ILS Zulu or ILS Yankee. ILS Yankee, the minimums are not as high. But the missed approach, minimum climb gradient of 340 feet per nautical mile. Oh, we could do the Zulu, yeah. We got a pretty light airplane today. We should be able to do 340 feet per nautical mile. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so let's plan the ILS Zulu 8. And I think that's what we planned already, wasn't it? I believe. ILS Zulu 8, we did. Great. Alright, now let's just see which transition we need in here. So Fillmore. Let's just see where this star ends here. So the star ends at E Hunt. And there's Van Nuys, there's Burbank. So E-Hunt, so we're going to be almost on a straight in here. I'll put in Fillmore just to give us something to look at, but I don't think we're even going to need Fillmore. So let's do ILS 08, but let's do the... Is Fillmore not, oh no, Fillmore's not a transition. Okay, no, we'll go with the Mickey transition. Okay, that'll work. Alright, it's recalculating. Let's just put some stuff in here. 1095.079. Ooh, these are nice nav radios. These are new. There's the club. These are new. These must be that new update PMPG just did, because I didn't even notice that. Those are nicer looking radios than they had before. 1095.073 for the inbound course. Damn it. I gotta set this up. I was yakking for way too long. We should have started setting up a lot sooner. Alright. As I recall, this is a pretty short runway too, so we're probably going to use a pretty high brake setting on this one. I hope that when we get this EFB in the 737 that it'll include a performance calculator. That would be lovely. 079, not 073. 079. Alright, 1095. And we got 1095, good. And we got auto brake 3. Because this is only a 5,800 foot runway. Yeah, we're going to probably plan a flaps 40 landing. Flaps 40 landing on this with auto brake 3. Alright, so let's do flaps 40 landing. Because I did come in here before on 08 and it was... we used up most of that runway. We did. Alright, climb 300. Alright, let's just go through. Make sure all the restrictions are in here. Alright, so we're on our way to Reberg. We joined at Reberg. Nittany, Crew 280, 290, Easy 280, 290 to 240. Highway 280, 220 to 200. Made 190 to 17,000. Peppers 270, 16 to 14. Heavy Rocker 250, 11 to 12. Zeppy 9 to 10. Ivan's 8,000 above. Mike 7,000. Oh, there's 7,000. There's Mike right there, 7,000. Perfect. So then we plan to just transition. It's actually already closed that up for us, so we'll have to just keep an eye on that. If SoCal comes online, we'll hopefully get that clearance. We have to change it otherwise. And yeah, so we've got all that in there. Let's just check the missed approaches in there as well. 1300 climbing right turn, 4600 on heading 210 and outbound on the VTU. Ventura. VOR. Alright, yeah, that's all in there. We did get the init rep in there, and the minimums for this, 1075. So I'm going to just sort of shrink this down a little bit because it's a little bit too big. And I didn't even point this out, but you guys, you probably noticed this already, but we do have the new updated version of Navigraph charts there. So it took them a little while to get it into the sim, but it's been on the desktop now for about a month or two. But now it's also in the sim in-game, pardon me, on the in-game panel now. The Navigraph version 8 charts are now available, which is great. They also, they look really nice. The vector charts look really nice. You can do a lot of really neat stuff with it. The one thing I'm disappointed at is that it doesn't work on mobile yet. You have to have a pretty big screen. So I like to use my cell phone sometimes just for tracking my flights when I'm walking around the house. So like I got a long flight, and I'll start down here in a second. So I got a long flight, and I step away from the flight deck for a little while. It's great because I can see the progress I'm making. All right, I'm just gonna put 20 for now, and you have control.
I have control.
Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Go ahead.
All right, so today we're doing the Rocker 2 RNAV arrival into Bob Hope Burbank. Let's see here. This is plate 10-2 Delta, 25th of January of 2019. Notes, RNAV DD, radar required RNAV 1 DDI or GPS, and expect runway 8 unless otherwise assigned by ATC. Oh, there you go. Well, I'm going to plan on that. Runway 8 from Ivans on track 126 to Mike, expect ILS or LOC 8. So at Mike it says we're supposed to expect that ILS or LOC to 8 anyway. So we have checked all the restrictions, and so the routing constraints are all as published. Transition into the ILS Zulu runway 8 in Burbank, 1095-079. So 079 set twice, 1095 set twice. It's all set up. The glide slope check height at Buddy 2735. 2753, excuse me, 2753, and the ILSDA of 1075. The touchdown zone at 727, 800 feet is what we got there, perfect. And missed approach is climb 1300 feet, climb right, turn 4600, heading 210 and inbound on the VOR 086 radial, the VTU VOR 086 radial to VTU VOR and hold. We require minimum climb gradient 340 feet per nautical mile. Shouldn't have too much of a problem making that one, with the airplane only about half full today. So, circling runway 26 authorized night, circling runway straight in 8, main on or above VG site glide path. Loc unusable within 0.9 to threshold. Loc unusable within 0.9 to threshold. So that's the missed approach height anyway. So once we reach the missed approach height, we got to disconnect the autopilot and just hand fly from that point if we're not already hand flying. We land on 08. The terminal's right over here, so we're just going to roll kind of towards the end, turn right. I'm going to find a gate in a second. And our alternate today is LAX. Let's just have a look at our fuel load here. Predicting 7.2. We only need like 3.8 to head over to LAX, so we got a good 3-4 tons extra here. We got lots of extra fuel, which is good. Terrain is obviously a bit of an issue around Burbank. There's a ridge to the south, and there's higher terrain to the north and east, hence the missed approach and the climb gradient and the missed approach. So we'll have the terrain mode up again. Actually, we still have it up on our way down here. Not seeing too much convective weather anyways. So we'll keep the terrain up. We'll reference that and make sure we follow the procedures and or the altitudes given to us by SoCal if SoCal comes online. Fingers crossed. Weather otherwise, ceilings at 2500, view at 1800, it's fine. Should be more than good enough to get in, I would expect. And the winds are light out of the southeast, 10 knots. Operational and fuel we've checked. So just any NOTAMs for Burbank. Now that I've set up the whole approach and everything, watch there be the ILS offline or something here. Let's check here. Alright. There is only a SID and an airport. So that's good. Okay, so no big NOTAMs there. Love it. I think we're just about ready here. Any questions?
No questions.
I have control. And I can see he's just running the descent procedure, and this IRS flag is still up there. That's fine. We know about that. Clear that. He's still doing something. I can see it in the window here. Still doing something. As soon as he's done,
You have control.
descent checklist.
Descent checklist. Pressurization. Landing altitude is 800 feet. Recall checked. Auto brake level 2. The landing data.
VREF 138. Minimums 1075 feet. Minimums 1075 feet.
VREF 138. Minimums 2450 feet. Approach briefing.
Completed.
Descent checklist complete.
So this is the one problem with this version of FS2Crew is that you have to set up the approach information in here. It won't grab it from the airplane. And I think this is more of a limitation of Microsoft Flight Simulator than anything else. So we're going to gate APU in the after landing procedure because it's a very quick taxi in. We'll say final sector, yeah, sure. So the minimum altitude, so this is left over from my previous flight. So now today it's 1075. The missed approach altitude is 4600, and what did I say? 2753, I think. I forget here. Hold on. Let's fast forward through this, buddy. 2753. There. That way he'll make his calls at the correct time. So you got to remember to update that, or it will not make the calls correctly on final, which is a little annoying. All its previous versions it grabbed it from the airplane itself. But what can you do? The one thing I'm going to do, yeah. So setting up the approach, yeah, it sets up all the calls so that it's gonna make all the calls properly on approach. It's going to call minimums. It's going to call passing the FAF. It'll set the missed approach altitude properly for you if you want to. So let me just look up a gate for this flight here. So from KPDX to KPDX-KBUR. Just find a gate number so that we can be ready when we land, because it's the shortest taxi in the world. So this one here is going to gate B5. So let's just pull this up one more time, see what we're doing here. And then what's the bottom altitude on this? It's 7,000. Mikey. So gate Bravo 5. And this is an Orbex scenery that has some built-in airplanes added already, so there's a chance that I may have to change my gate selection. Gates and coordinates. Let's see where B5 is here. Anyways, B5 is right on the corner here, so we may have to backtrack slightly. There is kind of a taxi lane here on the ramp, but it's like it's so close to the runway, there's so little maneuvering room. Fortunately, I don't think anybody else is coming in today behind us, so let's go ahead and set 7,000. And we're on our way down. Sorry I haven't been responding to the conversation there too much, but yeah, just we were having such a great shot. I was enjoying it. But you got to focus eventually. Eventually, you got to get on these, get on this arrival here. What did you say? Airbus went to, Boeing went to Airbus with the Max because they knew it's a computer plane. They messed up. Airbus been through the mill on the computer controls, so they know not to do it that way. Yeah, I mean there was so much. There's at the end of the day, like there's so much that contributed to the Max. It's not even funny. All right, we're supposed to start going faster down the hill here, so I'm going to do a manual speed intervention to get us up to 280 knots here at EZ. That's what ATC expects. There is so much. There's cultural problems at Boeing too. For years and years, Boeing used to be the epitome of American ingenuity and engineering prowess. And then when they merged with McDonnell Douglas, they brought on just a shareholder value above all else mentality. And it used to be like, you know, it wasn't that shareholder value didn't matter at Boeing, but the philosophy was that if you build good products, good, safe products that people want to buy, that will give the shareholders value. But then there was the whole corporate greed of the 1980s where it's just like, no, whatever you can do to sell shares and boost the profit for the next quarter. And I don't give a rat's rear end about about what happens 5 years from now, because I'm not going to be the CEO in 5 years, so I don't care. My bonuses will all come in for the next 5 years. I got a giant golden parachute, and then whatever happens 5 years down the road is the next guy's problem to deal with. And so it was just that cost-cutting mentality. And there were problems, absolutely. You know, the Max was really a stretch of the 737 at the end of the day. The Max probably shouldn't have happened, and it wasn't just Boeing; it was the airlines too. A lot of people put the blame on Boeing. Boeing did it, but they were so heavily pressured by the airlines. Southwest top of mind. Oh, you can't put out a new airplane. We have to train all our crew. We want another 737, but we want it bigger. We want it faster. We want it able to carry more. We want some modern technologies in it. But it still has to be a 737. It still has to be common type rating, so we don't have to retrain our crews. And like we're talking about, like the airlines not wanting to retrain their crews. So that was a huge impact. That was a huge impact on Boeing's decision at the end of the day. Boeing, I remember the early 2010s. You know, Boeing was having this. They had like a 3 or 4 year debate about, can we re-engine the 737 one more time, or do we need to build a new airplane? Because if we re-engine the 737, we can have it out there and flying in 5 years. But if we got to design a new airplane from the ground up, it's going to take us 10 years. We're going to be so far behind Airbus. So they kind of felt railroaded into it, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happened. It should never have happened that way. But Boeing got railroaded into it partly by the airlines. It wasn't just the airlines, but it was partly the airlines that really kind of force their hand into doing that, and we've all seen the end result. Unfortunately, when their hand got forced into flying, into building an airplane they were not ready to build, that they didn't think that a lot of people didn't think they should build. But the executives said, we got to build this, we got to make money, we got to compete with Airbus, and we got to do it on their terms. That was the thing. Was Boeing kind of? I think they never saw Airbus coming, but they just never really perceived them as a threat until finally they were, and then they were so far behind the 8 ball because you've got to be so far ahead in the airline, in the airframe business. You've got to be thinking 10 to 20 years ahead because it takes a long time. You can't launch an airplane in 5 years, and unless it's just an adaptation of an existing airplane. An all new airplane takes a decade easily to develop. Just ask Boeing about how their 797 is going now. Ask Airbus about how much money they poured into the A380. I don't think the program ever made the money. At the end of the day, I think the Airbus A380 never made Airbus a dollar. They lost money because the research on building an airplane that big and then trying to force everybody to adapt to it. They didn't sell enough copies to ever really make back the research money. The development costs is probably what I'm trying to say. So yeah, there's all sorts of problems. The MAX represents the culmination of a whole bunch of problems. Yeah, like Boeing did not necessarily know what they were doing when they were building a computerized airliner, but there was so much cultural stuff too. They could have probably foreseen the problems and solved the problems if people had been willing to deal with them. But the mentality was no, we can't tell the pilots about the MCAS system because if we have to spend too much time training them, the FAA might make us give them a new type rating, and that was just a non-starter for everybody. 2993. Transition set altimeter 2993.
Two, 993 set.
Turn it off too.
Checked.
Settling down there pretty quickly. My gosh, this flight went fast. When you guys are chatty, I don't even notice the time. Can't believe we're already here at top of descent point here. Alright, we're kind of into positive tats here. We're not quite at plus 10 yet, though. I think we might need the anti-ice for this one briefly here. Might get bumpy in those clouds as well, is what I'm thinking here. Peppers is supposed to be 270, so let's get the 270 on there now. Started slowing down. And, they should have never provided non-tricked out no bowling alley. That was where they were going to make the money, was the sponsorship on the bowling alleys. Oh, another gutter ball. Oh, well, the pilot banked. It's all the pilot's fault. Yeah, it's a pity that Boeing's MAX did not turn out the way that they had envisioned. And I feel bad for the company because it went from being such a dominant company to now, like, they're just so far behind the 8 ball because they are so obsessed with this corporate culture in America where you have to provide shareholder value for the next quarter. And, we'd rather do share buybacks than invest in the future. And in the the airframe business, it's all about investing in the future. You got to be ready to compete 10 years from now, and that's going to mean you have to start doing stuff now. Let's go engine anti-ice on. You got to start doing stuff now to compete 10 years from now. Let's go ahead, seatbelts on. Unable 250 knots at rocker. Let's go ahead and turn off the speed intervention and let it start just cycling back on its own here. It seems to have found its stable position here. Still don't see any SoCal approach online. Yeah, that is probably, at the end of the day, it's probably one of Boeing's biggest failings. There's a lot of technical failings, but at the end of the day, it's just the culture. It's all about, bringing the shareholder value up, and if you're telling me bad news that I don't want to hear, the management wouldn't take it. They would not want to hear they wouldn't want to hear the bad news. They would not want people to tell them what was going bad because they that could be bad for the shareholder. So just, you know, put your head in the sand and hope it doesn't become a problem later down the road. And that's no way to run an airframe business. You need to be proactive. You need to be on top of things ahead of time. Airbus has certainly had their share of problems over the years. Absolutely they have. They've improved their airplanes as a result, and it's unfortunate that it took problems. It took them having problems as well. I mean, every airframer's had them. The trouble with Boeing is that they've been around long enough that they should have known better. That's probably where they get into trouble there. And even Airbus has now been around long enough, they should know better with most of the systems. And Airbus does seem to be putting out some pretty good systems now. But they're still upgrading. And that's the crazy thing, is like, you take the Airbus A320, which is a 20, 30-year-old design now, and I mean, obviously we're putting new engines on it with the Neo, but they're putting software upgrades in there all the time now. And the newest one is fully automated TCAS. Not one of the newest ones, but fully automated TCAS. And you can leave the autopilot on, and the autopilot will fly your TCAS IRAs. That's pretty new. That's pretty nifty technology. It's not even upgraded in all the airplanes yet, but it's coming out slowly. Burbank traffic. Alaska 202 is 40 miles northwest, descending on the arrival for an ILS runway 08 Burbank. Alright, we do 7,000 here, right? Yep. Here comes 10,000. Let's do it now. Approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Altimeters.
2993 set.
2993 set. Approach checklist complete.
Oh, that was easy.
Cabin crew, prepare for landing.
That was easy. What's the 797? The 797 is kind of, it's still very much a theoretical. It's a 757 replacement, so it's kind of a medium to long haul, but smaller than like the 777.
10,000.
Something probably even a little smaller than maybe smaller than the 87. It's kind of a 57 replacement, so something in between the 37 and the 87 for kind of a medium to long haul, but with a smaller airframe. It's been something they've been talking about for a long time, because the 757 is an ancient airplane when you start to look at it now, and so many airlines are still flying them because there's not really any viable replacements at this time. I mean, for a route that maybe doesn't need the capacity of an 87. Then what are you stuck with? But below that, you're stuck with flying a 321 on that route. It's about the next biggest thing below the 87, certainly, unless you're going to the used airplane market. So there's a huge kind of mid-market range that is missing right now. There's nobody. An 808 with fat beats. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do after 797. Yeah, they are going to have to go with the 808 or something. But yeah, that's sort of the, and that's what the Airbus is targeting with the XLR is that mid-capacity, long-range aircraft that nobody's manufacturing right now. There's lots of sort of mid-range, smaller capacity, narrow-body airliners in the 320 family and the 37 family, sort of short to medium range and relatively small capacities. And then you've got the ultra-long hauls. You've got the Dreamliners. You've got the 350s at the other end of the scale. And in between there's really nothing being made right now. And that's the missing middle right now. All right, so it looks like we are going to hit Mickey at 7,000. I think it was 3,500 inbound from there. Where's my ILS Zulu here? 3,700. Hopefully we'll get to see some of this beautiful California scenery, because I saw it for the first time from the air just this past week. And even then, the arrival was done at night, so all it was the departure. When we did the departure, we left it just after lunch, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was just flying over the Southern California scenery, and then out over the desert over Las Vegas. Oh my God, I'd never seen that during the daylight before. That was the thing. So it's just something to see that scenery. It was something. Oh, I was like a tourist. As soon as we were up to 10,000 feet, my phone was out, and I was snapping pictures everywhere, because it's always great to see something new you haven't seen before. The 748 is out of production. Yeah, the last one rolled off the production line last month. This month? Last month? I think the last one came out of the paint shop in the last 30 days, and that's it. So the 747 family is done. The A380 family's done. The ultra-large aircraft are done. We're now into the large. It's either the large or the small, and that's the thing. Like, you look at the stables, the products that these two companies are selling, Boeing and Airbus, and it's two markets. There's the large long haul, and there's the small short haul, if you will, and there's just no middle. That's where the XLR is supposed to slot in, is kind of in that missing middle, and that's where they're kind of hoping that's where Boeing was supposed to put the 97 out, but they're too busy returning shareholder value to ever actually do anything. Pardon my skepticism, but yeah, it's going to take a long time before Boeing kind of changes culture like they need to. There's low glide slope armed. Start drawing back the speed here. We're going to slow down. Flaps 1.
Speed check.
We are below the glide slope. I can see the glide
Flaps
slope now, so
1
that's
sec.
good. Flaps 2.
Speed check. Flight deck. Okay, thanks. Captain, the cabin is secure.
Perfect,
Flaps
thank you.
up.
Just a plus 8 on the TAT as we slow down here. Flaps 5.
Speed check.
So I'm noticing, I never had this problem with the 737 before, but it looks like this guy, it looks like the flaps axis is suddenly really reacting here. So I'm going to have to make sure that
Flaps
I
5
sync
set.
my flaps axis as I call for flap settings here. Alright, we're kind of breaking out the bottom here. Alright, it's plus 9. It's not technically legal, but I'm just going to do it now.
1011.
You know, the temperature's going to come up here. Keep slowing down 190 here. There's VOR Loc. Here comes Burbank into view there, yeah. I think a visual from 5500 would have been a bit dicey here. We're at 4100, we're just getting out of the clouds now, so that would have been a bit dicey. Flaps 10.
Speed check. Flaps 10.
I have to say, when I was in California, it was nice and sunny. There was not a cloud in the sky. It was absolutely beautiful. Not so much the case today, but that's okay. There's a glide slope. Glide slope. Set Mr. Approach altitude.
4,600 set.
Burbank traffic, Alaska 202 is 10 miles final runway 08. Gear down.
Gear down. Radio altimeter alive.
Flaps 15.
Cabin crew, take your seats. Speed check. Flaps 15 set.
Flaps 25.
Speed check. Outer marker, high check, Mr. Bridge altitude is set.
Flaps 30.
Flaps 25. Speed check. Flaps 30 set.
Flaps 40.
Speed check.
Landing checklist.
Standby. Flaps 40 set.
Alright. I think everything's done. Landing checklist.
Landing checklist. Engine star switches.
Continuous.
Speed brake.
Armed.
Landing gear.
Down.
Flaps.
Flaps 40, green light.
Landing checklist complete.
My setting has suddenly become very stuttery here. It's fine all flight. I wonder if it's the scenery here at Burbank that's doing it. It was fine, and now it's suddenly very stuttery here.
1,000 feet. Not stable.
How not stable? Right on glide slope, right on speed. We've got configuration. What more you want? What is with this sudden choppiness here?
Checked.
Alright, autopilot's coming off.
500 feet.
What is
Approaching
with the choppiness
minimums.
here? Why? Why are you doing this to me, Sam?
Pressurization. Landing altitude is 800 feet. Recall.
Cancel
checked.
checklist.
Brake, level 3. The landing data. Minimums.
Continue.
Speed brake up. Water brake disarmed. Reverses
Manual braking.
60 knots.
That was a really annoying approach, just because it's so choppy. Why is it so choppy all of a
Ladies and
sudden?
gentlemen, this is the conclusion of our flight. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign and the aircraft is parked safely at the gate.
Come on.
This will be your
Get
indication
moving.
that it's safe to follow the cabin gather your belongings. We'd like to thank you for flying with us today. We appreciate your business. Hope to see you once again on a future flight.
Really? No, it is moving. You just can't tell because it's so choppy. Did I pop the tires or something? Because I cannot seem to move this airplane now. What the heck? Did I just pop the tires? 'Cause I did have to lay on the brakes pretty hard there. What am I doing here? ATG setup, aircraft, failures.
APU on the buses.
Tire failure. Yeah. Ay. Go away. I did not hammer on the brakes that hard. I definitely did not. I think it's going to keep on failing on me unless I am able to do some maintenance. How do I do this here? Oh my god. I know we laid into the brakes, but I didn't lay into them that hard. They should not have failed. What can I do here? What if I do FS actions? Ground maintenance, that's what I'm looking for. Cool brakes. Replace tires. And then we can probably go here in a second as soon as they finish doing that. I also noticed that we didn't get any of the, there we go, audio callouts, the GPWS callouts. during the flare there. I don't know if you guys noticed that as well too, but I get so used to them. Like, oh, I hate to say I need them, but I kind of need them, especially on an airplane I'm not terribly familiar with. And I did not get any of them. It also does not help that this thing turned into a slideshow on final there. It's better now. I don't know why it was turning into a slideshow. It was
3
a little
minutes.
frustrating. I haven't seen that for a while. I don't know if it's the scenery here that's doing it. It could be the scenery. Boeing's buying cheapo tires too. Well, it's up to the airline to buy the tires they want, so. Oh well, that gave me the 3 minutes while we were sitting there waiting to go. But like, this airport especially to me is crazy how like the ramp is just connected to the runway. And all that separates the ramp from the runway is a dashed yellow line. You better know where you're going. Alright, so I know we were supposed to be Bravo 5, but the scenery has a static airplane that occupies that gate, so we're going over here to Bravo 3. But doesn't it just like blow the mind that like this is the... I'm taxiing on the line, technically like my wing's hanging over that yellow line, like it's not over the runway, but I certainly wouldn't want anybody operating on that runway while I'm right next to it. Lights and doors. 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 Oh, crying out loud, fine, I'll do it myself. I don't even know where the marshaller is. He's probably inside the building. The GSX generated marshaller. Alright, so I can see that line there that says 737, 700, 800. So it's the first of those 3 lines there. So we'll just do it the old-fashioned pre-GSX days. Oh, no, it says CRJ actually. No, that's 737. It's on the last line there. Good old self-marshalling. Oh, I think that's probably, yeah, there's the marshaller's hands right there. He's literally right inside the building, so I will take GSX later today and I will customize this gate so he actually stands out there. Alright, there we go. Made it. We've got APU is on the bus. Yep. Thank you. I will submit my flight momentarily. Alright, seatbelts off. Parking checklist. Shutdown checklist. Shutdown checklist. Lights and doors. Shutdown checklist. Oh, you're an idiot. Shutdown checklist. FS2Crew is great when it works. Doesn't work all the time though. It's a little bit hit or miss sometimes. Alright. Anyways. Let's see here. Request deboarding.
Boarding requested.
So we're going to need someone to bring over a jetway. Or not jetway, but airstair. Yeah, airstair's coming over. Shutdown checklist. Shutdown checklist. Oh, for crying out loud. I'll read it myself then. Fuel pumps are off. Probe heat off. Hydraulic panel set. Flaps up. Park and brake set. Engine start levers are cut off. Weather radar is off. No, it was off. Alright, shutdown checklist is complete and we're done. So a little bit of a frustrating end there with a plummeting frame rate on final. Some melted tires, which I think that was a little bit over the top. And yeah, anywho. Because it wasn't even that heavily loaded. It should not have burst the tires just to stop on the runway. I definitely did not give you full braking, not even anything close to it, but she definitely felt like she needed it. Anywho, yeah, we're here. For whatever it's worth, we made it to Burbank, and another leg complete. So let's just go ahead and submit that. Hopefully we get a decent score from this one. The landing was fine again, and the other thing I noticed too was everything went away. Yeah, FS2Crew is generally great. I really like it as a general rule, but every once in a while it just hangs up. It won't hear me, and it even like you'll even see it here, like it lists like shut down checklist. It recognizes my speech. It knows what I'm trying to say to it, and it just refuses to perform those actions. So it's generally great software, but it does get caught in its own little ruts sometimes. It does get caught there, and it's frustrating. And then I don't know why it's going off the flap axis today. I'm gonna have to disable that flap axis for this airplane because I like just commanding the flap and not having to look down, because especially with the Boeing flaps, you have what 10 settings here. It's easy to be off by a setting when you're trying to set your flap axis here just by hand, so or by feel without literally looking for it. You don't have those notches. So I would love to have those notches. I'd love to get one of those little D10 add-ons for the Honeywell. I think that'd be great. Or the honeycomb. I don't know why I call it Honeywell all the time. Honeycomb. But anyways, not too bad. Score of 96. It's a pretty reasonable score. Made some money. Go back to my dashboard. I got things are slowly coming together. I'm slowly making more and more money than I was before. $3,200 now. My hourly salary is $31, and I'm about halfway to my first upgrade to first officer from junior first officer. And the other thing is I did get a friend request in there as well, so let's go to that community and let's just accept that, whoever that was. Next time, don't have a blowout. Thank you. I don't know if you mean a blowout with the tires or blowout with the FO, because I was ready to hit him too. He was not helping when I needed his help. Esteban is now my friend. Yeah, he was a little bit annoying too there. I gotta say, at the end of the day, it was a little frustrating. I think you could probably hear that in my voice. Yeah, you're trying to do stuff on stream. You're trying to be as professional as possible. I nailed that landing pretty well. We floated a tiny bit, but really at the end of the day, we nailed it pretty well. So for that, I think that was a little bit overkill to pop the tires. And the funny thing is, like, you don't even know, you don't have temperature gauge readout in the 737 for the tires. So all you know is that just, at some point the airplane stops moving. Sometimes hitting him is therapeutic. Yeah. After FS2Crew refused to listen to me, and that frame rate drop too was very frustrating. It's fine now, and I think it must be the scenery. I don't know. I haven't seen a frame rate drop like that in a while, so I don't know what was doing that. What was using up all that processor capability that it was that it really took it to that level, because that was horrendous on final there. How I managed to flare that airplane with that frame rate and actually land it, I don't know. But this is why I'm scared to use a Phoenix as well on stream, because streaming takes a fair amount. It takes some of your processor power, anyways. It takes 2 to 3% of your processor power. It's not necessarily a huge amount, but when you're trying to run programs that are trying to max out your CPU and your GPU to begin with, the last thing you need to do is take another 3% for streaming, and then you got the Phoenix with the which takes like 10 to 20% just to operate all the screens and computers in the A320. That's way more than I'm ready to give up. So apparently they are working on it. I was talking to one of the guys, and there are performance tweaks still in the work. They know it's a performance-intensive airplane. They're trying to find ways to tweak the performance even more so that it improves in the future, so that more of us can get better performance out of it, even with lower-end systems. They know it's kind of the performance is not stellar all the time, and they're trying to find ways to tweak it, make it better. So I'm hoping that in the future there will be a big update that will improve the performance on the Phoenix, because then I'd love to stream it. I would really love to stream it, but I can't do it. I can't do it the way it is right now. I just can't do it. Anywho, but that is enough for me for today. We've done our flight. The next flight we're going to do is let's see here. Burbank back to Seattle, and I think when we get back to Seattle, I think what we'll do is we'll switch it up. We'll switch the 737-800 out for a 737-700 when we get to Seattle. Then when we get back to Seattle, then we do a bit of a long slog through LAX, Guadalajara, and back through LAX, back to Portland again. So definitely got some legs here still to go. We're going to make some good money on those next couple of legs. The next one, it's going to be about a 2.5 hour flight again back to Seattle. So it's going to use up some time, but Yeah, Dane Platts. Yeah, I will definitely as soon as I finish the stream here, I'll definitely add you to my list here, and hopefully I'll see you on these streams sooner or later. But I think that's enough for me for today. It was definitely fun. Great chatting with you. I really enjoyed the conversation. It's nice to have some nice interactive conversations. I feel sometimes like I'm so much like I'm just talking at people and not with people, and I love the chance to talk with people and discuss this industry, this business, this hobby with people. So that was great fun. I hope 8 o'clock weekdays, I will do my best. 8 o'clock is not always a great time for me on weekdays, but I will do my best to try and drop by. But I'll definitely add you anyways in there, and if I see you're online, I'll try and watch the stream. So thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. For everybody else out there watching on Twitch or watching this post-haste on YouTube, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you again out there on the friendly VATSIM skies sooner or later. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you guys real soon.